Chapter 176. Upon hearing that the black dragon called herself Onyxia, Levin wondered loudly, "No way, you can't be Onyxia." "Why?" Jaina asked. "Why meow?" Onyxia was also confused. "Why can't she be herself?" Then Levin gave the answer, "Onyxia is the princess of the Black Dragon clan, the king of the Black Dragons, the guardian of the earth, the daughter of Deathwing, and Neldharion. She should have the power of the earth, a body that is far stronger than an ordinary dragon, superb spells, and a fiery breath. As long as I know that the target of the mission is her, I will definitely put down the mission and run away without any hesitation. With her strength, no matter how inferior she is to her father and brother, she is not as weak as you. With all due respect, except for that deep breath, you and Onyxia have nothing in common." Onyxia didn't expect that the reason the other party thought she was not her was because she was too weak. "What's the reason?" "I'm really sorry that I'm so weak, Naya." The boy's words made Onyxia proud and sad at the same time. "What I am proud of is that the other party actually admires me so much. Sadly, I am now so weak that I can't even prove my identity." However, when thinking of Levin's previous declaration that as long as you lie, I will FK you, Onyxia still had to rack her brains to prove herself in order not to be FE'd. "Well, there's a reason why I'm so weak, Naya. After coming to this world, I couldn't feel the power of the earth, so I became weak, Naya. In addition, after I came to this world, I found that the magic rules of this world are slightly different, and I temporarily lost the ability to use magic. I could have recovered after giving me a period of adjustment." 01, who you know it comes so fast, meow. To sum up, I'm really not that weak, Naya. Mr. Levin, I didn't lie, meow. Onyxia spoke so fast that she bit her tongue. It was obvious that she was working hard not to become a pet or be sterilized. She said she became weak because she couldn't sense the power of the earth and couldn't use magic. Do you believe it? After hearing this, Levin looked at his companions. Regarding the power of the earth and the inability to use magic, Cyrilla and Tonks looked confused and could not offer any constructive suggestions. "So we still have to look at Gianna." Jaina frowned and said slowly, "The power of the earth? I don't know much about the power inherited by these guardian dragons. But I have some feelings about the inability to use magic. When I first came to this world when I was young, I couldn't use magic. It took more than half a month to adjust before I could recover, and it took 10 years to be able to use magic as usual." Hearing Jaina support her statement, Onyxia immediately said happily, Right, so I didn't mean to become so weak, meow. According to Levin's level classification, Onyxia's professional level should be LV19 Black Dragon / LV6 Mage. Since dragons are born with the ability to cast spells, a LV19 Black Dragon is equivalent to an 11th level caster level. Therefore, after superimposing a LV6 Mage, his spell caster level is 17, which is equivalent to a LV17 Mage, except that it lacks many of the abilities of a high-level mage. Almost on par with Jaina. If Onyxia really temporarily lost her ability to cast spells after crossing the other world, it wouldn't be surprising that her strength would be reduced. "Okay, I'll consider half of your reasons to be true." Under Onyxia's expectant gaze, Levin handed down his verdict, "But you still have to give further proof, such as, show me something unique to Onyxia." He's coming again. People are fighting for each other, and I am fighting for the flesh. Faced with Levin's persecution, what can she do? She is just a little kitten and can only obey him. Something unique to me. Something unique to me. Onyxia thought hard. Suddenly, she had a flash of inspiration. "I thought of meow. I can tell you my experience in Azeroth before crossing over. No other dragon knows about this, meow. I transformed into a human and mingled with the nobles of the Kingdom of Stormwind under the name Katrana Presto. After the victory of the Second Orc War, I returned to Stormwind with King Varian Rin. The kingdom was restored, and he became a high-level leader in Stormwind City by virtue of his magic and negotiation skills. Me, I also secretly corrupted the nobles, instigated conflicts between the stonemasons of Stormwind City and the nobles, bankrupted the stonemason brotherhood, triggered their riots, and accidentally killed Varian's queen Meow. While Varian was grieving in his heart and ignoring government affairs, I have become the de facto controller of Stormwind City. Before crossing over, I was even leading the formation of reinforcements to support Lord Aaron, which had just been captured by the undead scourge. But before she could finish speaking, she was interrupted by Gianna. "Wait, you said, Lord Aaron has just fallen into the undead disaster. The undead disaster has just happened." Gianna looked serious and asked hurriedly, "When you traveled through, which part of the dark portal was it?" "Year. It's been 20 years since the dark portal, what's wrong?" Onyxia was confused. "But it was also 20 years after the dark portal when I traveled through it, but at that time, Arthas had just led the scourge of the undead to capture Lord Aaron. In other words, the time you traveled through was only a shorter period of time than mine. But the time difference between you and me after we traveled to this world is 12 years. After a thorough analysis, Jaina came to the conclusion, the speed of time passing in different worlds seems to be different. In other words, if I can return to Azeroth, I don't have to worry about seeing my old relatives. When she thought of this, the Princess of Kul Tiras felt much better. "So, I passed the test, right, meow?" Onyxia said in a flattering manner. When Jaina heard this, she just smiled gently. "You still have to ask Levin about this kind of thing. We let him make the decision on this kind of thing. Damn it. You are a disciple of the majestic speaker of Dalaran, and you are also the deputy director of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement in this world. You are so many years older than the other party, and you actually let that boy make the decision. Where is your dignity? Where is your arrogance? But on the surface, Onyxia did not dare to show any complaints on her kitten face, but looked at Levin obediently. Levin nodded, then shook his head. Even with this information, I can assume that you heard it from hearsay and there is no basis for it. Damn it, how can you be satisfied, meow? This won't work, and that won't work either. The little black cat almost collapsed. Then he saw Quan showing a mysterious smile. I heard that the dragon's spell to transform into a mortal is very powerful. After transforming into a mortal, not only can it not be detected by ordinary spells, but it can also possess various characteristics of a mortal, and can even have offspring with mortals. But this spell has only one drawback, that is, you can only select a specific race and cannot adjust the transformed appearance. In other words, each mortal transformed by the dragon can only have one face. Then, Miss Onyxia, why don't you show yourself as a mortal and let us see if you are Countess Katrana Presto? Onyxia found that she still underestimated the other party's understanding of the dragon. He actually knows this kind of thing? Indeed, the reason why the dragon's transformation spell is more powerful than any transformation spell is that it's because this spell essentially makes the dragon become itself in the mortal state. The characteristics of a mortal are entirely determined by the characteristics of the dragon form. This also means that the face in the mortal state, like the face in the dragon state, is his original face and cannot be changed. Using this method, we can indeed identify 100% whether he is Onyxia or not. There is only one problem, I'm just a little kitten, I don't have the ability to transform. It doesn't matter, you don't think my limiter only has a switch function. Levin smiled slightly and showed off the dark red crystal in his hand. Next, I will slightly adjust the restraints of the crystal so that you can transform into a human. But if you want to break free during this period, you will do so at your own risk. As he spoke, he gently touched the crystal in his hand. Onyxia suddenly felt that the restraint of the malevolent transformation on her body was loosened. She felt a long-lost relief, as if she could release a little of her powerful power from the small container. As a black dragon and the daughter of Deathwing, she is naturally not a good girl. She does whatever Levin says. I was so obedient before, but it was just because the situation was stronger than the person. But now, out of caution, she did not rashly change back to her true form, but instead changed into a human form obediently. So soon, the person sitting on Levin's lap was no longer the black cat, but a mature and charming beauty with black hair and shawl. It was Countess Katrana Prester of Stormwind City. This time I believe it, you are indeed Onyxia. Seeing this face, Levin finally nodded. Seeing that her transformation was correct, Katrana cast a flirtatious look at the boy in front of her, which made Cyrilla, Gina, and Tonks furious, and they were about to accuse her. She immediately transformed and tried to force her way back to the dragon form. Then she discovered that in the face of her own burst of power, the strange restraint that restrained her seemed to be angered, and a larger restraint was imposed on her. Her body shrunk dramatically, even smaller than the black cat form. Her whole body turned into a black mouse. Haha, I've already said that if you try to break free, you will be responsible for the consequences. It seems you are really disobedient. Levin threw the panicked little black mouse away and put it in his pocket. Did you believe she was Onyxia? Cyrilla asked curiously, but you were not surprised to see her in human form. I don't believe it 100%. Levin shook his head. Without the power of the earth and the ability to cast spells, it is normal for Onyxia to behave like a slightly more powerful ordinary black dragon. But as long as 1% of them are fake maybe, I can't really believe it. That's why I need to verify it. They're all excuses. Tonks said with a I don't know you yet expression, I think you just want to torment her this time. She has caused so much trouble for us, isn't it worth the trouble? Levin said in a matter-of-fact tone. Then, he looked at the three of them. Now that everything that needs to be asked is clear, we still have one more thing to discuss, and that is how to deal with her. Should she be killed or retained, caught or released? Of course, kill her. Tonks said righteously, sneak into the kingdom, corrupt the nobles, stir up conflicts, frame the lower class, and usurp the royal power. Which of these is something a good person would do? Gina also agreed, Tonks is right. Since she is the daughter of Deathwing and is born to be our opposite, why keep her? Levin, yes, what if that's not the case? Although she has done all kinds of bad things as Countess Katrana Presto, we must also realize that she is indeed very capable in the field of power, and she can do all kinds of things when no one knows her. What's more, even if we have conflicts over this or that, we should stick together in a different country. Ah, this, the last one is so true. At this time, a Countess of Presto is needed to integrate the parts they cannot involve. Indeed, whether it is Levin who takes the serious academic route or Gianna who takes the serious bureaucratic route, under such circumstances, relying on a forged background, he easily blended into the aristocratic circle, and took a dominant position, winning over and controlling dozens of people. This is what we currently lack. 17 In fact, we do need such a talent. If Onyxia can really do this, then their reach over the entire magical world can be greatly expanded. Hey? It depends on whose magical contract is stronger, hers or mine. Levin was full of confidence in this regard. The groups they can control and influence are limited, and it is impossible to cover all aspects. After listening to Levin's words, the three of them nodded frequently. Cyrilla also expressed her support, that's right. This little charlatan dares to seduce you in front of us. He should have died long ago. But what if she loses control? I think that the Ministry of Magic bureaucrats and various families in this world are no more clever than the nobles of Azeroth. But before that, let her suffer as a little mouse. We can give her a certain degree of freedom and let her repeat her previous operations in this world. Levin ignored their antics and said seriously, I think she can stay as long as I can control her. Cyrilla was still a little worried. Chapter 177. After killing Capac, who was causing trouble for them, and capturing the black dragon Onyxia, Levin and his party had no reason to stay there. After all, the local folks don't have much surplus food, and they can't afford to hold a banquet a day like this. Capac is dead. Due to the hatred of killing people for many years, his lineage is not suitable to stay and continue to be a shaman. So this small tribe began to face difficulties without the protection of the shaman. It was the vampire sisters who finally solved this problem. They have a large hunting range and know many shamans. Because they are strong enough and can drink blood with restraint, they have a bit of face in front of the shamans of many tribes. This time, they contacted the shaman of an indigenous tribe. This generation of shaman has 2 sons, and he himself is getting old. He is facing the dilemma of not knowing who to inherit the position of shaman. This small tribe, which had lost its shaman, had just been used to house its extra son. By the way, after seeing the feathered serpent in the form of Levin, this tribe began a movement to transform the idols. Abandoning most of the past statues of gods, we chose to use Levin as a reference to carve a new Quetzalcoatl statue. Because they saw the feathered serpent with their own eyes, the statues they carved were lifelike and soon became popular among nearby indigenous tribes. This tribe has been famous for producing the best idols for a long time. The battlefield where Levin conquered the black dragon is regarded by them as the place where the god Quetzalcoatl conquered the devil appeared. Especially the area that took a deep breath from Onyxia and has now become barren of grass. Every year, many indigenous people come to worship. The names of Levin and others appear in the oral epics of these indigenous people and are widely praised. I believe that if they still maintain this way of life for hundreds of years, then Levin and others will also become heroes in their myths. Of course, the above are all things that happened after Levin and others left, and have nothing to do with Levin and his party. After the few people left the jungle, they followed Levin's plan and had a good time around Peru. They visited Machu Picchu, one of the 7 wonders of the world, and experienced firsthand the ancient Inca city located in the majestic Andes Mountains. They went to the golden sandy beach of Paracas, and while enjoying the sun and ocean, they also saw large flocks of flamingos and Humboldt penguins living in hot areas. They also visited the most beautiful Rainbow Mountain in Peru. The colorful mountain has distinct layers and interweaves with various colors from lavender, golden, burgundy to cinnabar and turquoise. The beautiful scenery makes people feel like they are in a fairy tale world. Finally, they also went to the vast Uyuni salt flats and saw the so-called mirror reflecting the sky. This trip to South America lasted for more than 3 weeks, and the 4 of them finally ended the trip at their own expense and returned to the Yin Kingdom. In the past 3 months, Onyxia finally got rid of the punishment of being a mouse, and her treatment was slightly improved. She regained the right to be a cat. Of course, this is not without cost. The price is that she needs to provide enough blood. Levin used the blood of these black dragons, combined it with the skull of an ordinary fire dragon, and transformed it into the shape of Onyxia's head through transformation and alchemy. They all enjoyed the trip sponsored by the Ministry of Magic. Then you have to complete the tasks assigned by the Ministry of Magic. According to Levin's arrangement, they specifically chose a week after the news of Sirius's escape from prison to return to Demon County. After seeing this huge and ferocious dragon head, Cornelius Fudge was shocked, and then ecstatic. At this time, the news of Sirius's escape from prison was spreading, causing panic in the magical world of Yin Kingdom. The reputation of the Ministry of Magic was greatly reduced. It was the time when something needed to be done to stabilize people's hearts. Fudge immediately took out the dragon-slaying journey of the 4 Jinas and used it as the Ministry of Magic's political achievements and promotional materials. He reported it extensively, successfully offsetting the negative impact of Sirius's prison break and preventing Feng Ping from being killed. Even the dragon head was hung in the hall of the Ministry of Magic as an iconic trophy. Poor Onyxia, even if she changes to another world, she can't change the fate of having her head hung on the city gate. Fudge's character was completely captured by Levin. Now, Levin's political power has increased through this opportunity. The Deputy Director of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement, Gina Proudmoore, made a good appearance in the entire Ministry of Magic. Tong's status in the Aura office was also greatly improved, and Firewire was promoted to the level of squad leader. At the same time, the bureaucrats of the Ministry of Magic of the Underworld also met a noble lady from South America, Katrina Presto. After only organizing a few banquets, she successfully entered the upper echelons of the Yin Kingdom's magical world and became very popular. She is radiant, she is incredibly wealthy, and she has a distinguished status. It is said that this respectable lady holds the title of Duke in her ancestors. And the aristocratic pomp and style she displays in every gesture can even make her proud. The aristocratic Malfoy family was ashamed of themselves. From this point of view, everyone believes that Ms. Presto's ancestors are definitely noble. This Ms. Catlina Presto is naturally Onyxia's dragon in human form. It is almost natural that she can use her aristocratic temperament to fool the wizards who live in Dayin. How can a group of modern people compare their aristocratic temperament with a traveler from medieval civilization? What you call aristocratic temperament is just the cosplay of modern people, and other people's aristocratic temperament is their daily life. As for the overwhelming wealth and aristocratic pomp, with Levin's Philosopher's Stone, a great noble can be created just by stacking gold. After signing a series of magical contracts, Levin officially allowed her to appear in front of the public in human form, in order to implement the previously formulated plan and use Onyxia's skills in Stormwind City to infiltrate influence into the Kingdom of Yin. Among the bureaucrats and purebloods of the Ministry of Magic, even Jaina cooperated with her in this matter. According to Jaina, it was with her help that Jaina and others were able to find and kill the Black Dragon that brought big trouble to the Yin Kingdom when the guide was killed. And this lady, after making friends with Deputy Director Proudmoore, had the idea of a moving to the Kingdom of Yin. In this regard, what is the attitude of the Yin Kingdom magic world? Of course you are welcome. This lady is not only a friendly person who helps the great Yin Ministry of Magic, she is also a naturalized person with sufficient ability and financial resources, and she is also one of countless wizards who claim to be noble, regardless of the object of admiration for men and women. In order to prompt her to make this decision, the Ministry of Magic even made an exception and bypassed the existing NEWT exam rules and arranged a decent position for her in the Ministry of Magic. Specifically, working as a consultant in the Fire Dragon Research and Restriction Bureau of the Department for the Regulation and Control of Magical Creatures. After all, Ms. Prester's experience of helping Jaina kill the Black Dragon was better than any exam. In this regard, Levin's evaluation is that he deserves his reputation and got the right result through the wrong path. Throughout the entire Harry Potter world, no one is more suitable to manage fire dragons than the Black Dragon Princess. Within the Dragon clan, bloodline suppression is a natural phenomenon. As the princess of the Black Dragon, Onyxia's bloodline is naturally at the top of the dragon. And these fire dragons in the Harry Potter world, each one counts. In the worlds of WoW and D&D, they must be classified as dragons. Onyxia naturally has blood suppression on them. Whenever there are fire dragons causing trouble, as long as Onyxia stops there, every one of these fire dragons will turn into a little obedient cat. Chapter 178. After the trip to South America, Levin's summer vacation life returned to peace. As usual, he lived a two-person world with Cyrilla in the tower. Hermione, who went on vacation in France, would sometimes send him letters to communicate with him about her experiences in France. Their neighbor Luna occasionally visits. Levin often visits each other through the Flow network and stays in each other's house for a few days. This trip to South America made the relationship between the four participants much closer. By the way, Onyxia also bought a manor near Jaina's home, and began to steadily develop her image as a descendant of the aristocracy. As the days passed, Levin's comfortable summer vacation life gradually came to an end. It's the first day of school again. Levin prepared his luggage early and headed to the platform with Cyrilla. Hi, Cyrilla, and Levin. Pinello, who had long curly hair, spotted the two people who had just crossed the partition wall at a glance, walked over quickly, and greeted them happily. Long time no see, Pinello. Hello, senior sister. I saw you guys in the newspaper again. Pinello said in surprise, you seem to be in trouble wherever you go. I mean you can have adventures. It's really not our fault this time. You know we were invited by the Ministry of Magic. Levin emphasized, but it was finally an experience. Just as Cyrilla and Pinello were chatting about their summer vacation in South America, an excited voice interrupted their conversation. Ah, Pinello. It's Percy Weasley. Percy smoothed his red hair as he walked and deliberately raised his chest so that Pinello could see his shining badge clearly. The expression was like a peacock spreading its tail. Even Cyrilla snickered. Penelope gave them a scathing look, then turned to Percy. When did I allow you to call me by my name? Pinello raised her head and read the words on the badge, President of the Student Council. Percy smiled extremely brightly and puffed up his chest in front of Yewen beside him. I'm not the one competing for your girl. Levin glanced at Cyrilla beside him dejectedly, feeling that he was taking the blame. Don't look at Ciri acting like a coward next to Levin. With her beautiful face, sassy personality, and heroic temperament, she will definitely be evaluated as Jaquan Tianke online just like a copper human-shaped trap. Seeing Levin deflated, Shirley covered her mouth and looked gloating. Fortunately, Percy had someone to deal with. Congratulations, Percy, but I also have this thing. Pinello took out an almost identical badge from his pocket, so it's nothing to show off. Percy didn't refute, but smiled even more happily. At this time, the train's whistle happened to blow for a long time, which seemed to urge them to sneak into the army. Percy picked up his salute, looked at Pinello, and wanted to take the initiative to carry her salute onto the train before Levin and Cyrilla. But he picked up Pinello's luggage and immediately put it down with a blush on his face. This salute is really too heavy. Pinello, what did you put in it? Percy rubbed his arms vigorously. Is this thing heavy? Cyrilla glanced at Percy strangely, lifted her suitcase with one hand, and boarded the train lightly with Levin and Pinello, leaving Percy alone. His eyes widened and his face turned red. Am I not as strong as a girl? He murmured. Sure enough, it was the kind-hearted Cyrilla who was gloating to Levin just now, but when she found the opportunity, she immediately embarrassed Percy and avenged Levin. Why are you, Percy Weasley, competing with a woman who dares to slash a black dragon head-on with a sword? Seeing that the mortal flies were dismissed, Pinello also laughed, but she soon became less happy. Sorry, Shirley, I can't sit with you. I have to go to another box, and then I have to inspect the train. Pinello said bitterly, and she suddenly felt that being the president of the Female Student Union was not entirely satisfactory. A good thing. It's okay, we can stay with them. Levin raised his head and happily greeted Hermione, Harry, and others who were looking around in the distance. He wished that the man who had stolen his wife from him would leave as soon as possible. Okay. Then I'll leave first. Pinello looked at the frowning people walking in the distance, shook his beautiful curly hair, and turned around and left without any hesitation. Shirley waved goodbye to her best friend, and then walked towards Hermione and the others with Yawen. There were only 4 empty seats in the cubicle, and there were 5 of them in total. If you insist on sitting together, Ronald would have to sit on Harry's lap. If it hadn't happened last semester, Harry might have been willing to accept it. After all, Ronald was his best friend. But since he accidentally cast love protection on Ronald, rumors began to spread that the two of them had some kind of relationship that went beyond friendship. Then everyone looked at them with strange and understanding eyes. After all, this is the kingdom of Yin. From that moment on, Harry knew to avoid suspicion. Since his friend felt embarrassed, Naifen had no choice but to sacrifice himself. No way, he is such a warm-hearted person. So he chose to squeeze in with Zarella and Hermione. A man, 2 women, and 3 people were sitting right next to each other on a sofa that could only accommodate 2 people. This slightly ambiguous scene made Hermione's neck turn red, and she was anxious to find a topic to ease this embarrassing situation. Then he discovered that in a separate compartment next door, a strange man sleeping soundly by the window aroused her interest. This man was wearing a tattered wizard robe with many patches on it. Just looking at his face, the man was not too old, but his short light brown hair had turned white, which made him look sickly and without energy at all. You know, the Hogwarts Express is usually a student train. Except for the witch pushing a cart selling snacks, they had hardly seen any other adults in the car before. Hey, look over. Hecky gestured to his companions to look over. Do you know who he is? Ronald asked in a low voice. Remus John Lupin. Levin and Hermione said in unison. How do you know? Ronald was stunned. Is it prophecy magic? Did you prepare for the divination class in advance? This is amazing, as expected of UAE. No, I think it's logical reasoning. Harry adjusted his glasses and joined in the topic. I remember when I was in elementary school, Levin once recommended a book called The Sherlock Holmes to me. The Sherlock Holmes in it being able to deduce the truth of difficult cases one after another through observation of details and rigorous logical reasoning. I guess they just used this technique. Levin can do this. Levin was both happy and embarrassed to be blown away by 2 friends. Well, actually the reason is not that exaggerated. He touched his nose and told the truth sheepishly. I just saw the sign on his box, and it said his name. As he spoke, Levin pointed upward. There was a tattered small box on the shelf. Lupin's name was printed on the corner of the box, and the letters were already peeling off. Ronald and Harry looked at each other, suddenly embarrassed. After a while, Ronald took the initiative and asked, I wonder what he is here for. No need to ask, Hermione said quickly, he is our future defense against the dark arts professor. He also printed this thing on his own box. Ronald was shocked. Why didn't he also print his birthday and address? No. This is not printed on the box. Hermione explained even more awkwardly, the only students who can be on this car are professors, and this is the only vacant professor position at Hogwarts. This time, it's logical reasoning. Levin finally added. Ronald's ears turned red with embarrassment, but he forced another question to save his respect. Do you think he knows about the curse? What curse? Harry looked at him strangely. It's the mysterious man's curse. This job has been cursed by the mysterious man. No one can work for a full year and still be intact. Ronald said mysteriously. Look at how he's dressed. Obviously, he needs this job. Zilly said with some pity. When she first traveled through time, she was in the same situation for a while, which made her feel the same way. Wish him good luck. There really was no teacher who could teach this subject for more than 1 year in the past 2 years. Harry felt that the curse Ronald mentioned was probably true. Time passed quickly. After the train started, the carriage quickly became quiet. The few of them chatted and found something to do for themselves. Levin leaned directly on the girl's legs and closed his eyes to rest. Cyrilla began to take care of her sword again. Hermione took out this year's textbook and started reading. The train continued to drive north, and the rain outside became heavier. The window panes took on a thick, sticky gray that gradually deepened until the lights in the carriage came on. The wind roared, raindrops knocked on the windows, and the train swayed and slowed down. In each carriage along the corridor, people poked their heads out to look around. The train suddenly trembled and stopped. There was a BG sound in the distance, indicating that the luggage fell from the rack. Then, all the lights suddenly went out, and they were plunged into complete darkness. At this time, Levin was about to enjoy the snacks he had just bought. When he suddenly stopped like this, he almost spilled his iced drink. What's going on? We are eating hot pot and singing songs, and suddenly we are going to be robbed by bandits. Levin complained loudly. But it was not the bandits who robbed the road, but something even more terrifying, the soul eater. Chapter 179. Dancing Light Technique. As Hermione chanted a spell, a small ball of light rose from the tip of her staff, illuminating the entire carriage. There was a harsh squeaking sound in his ears. It was Ronald. He was trying to wipe a clean spot on the car window and looked out. There's something moving outside, Ronald identified carefully. It seems like someone is getting into the car. But he didn't need to say it. Several people in the carriage had already seen one of the uninvited guests. A tall figure wearing a cloak slowly emerged from the carriage door. Its face is completely hidden under the hood, making it unclear. It was floating quietly at the door. A grey-white claw that looked like a mummy stretched out from the tattered cloak. It nodded at Levin and others a few times, as if counting the number of people. Then, it slowly retracted its paws and took a deep breath. Cackle, cluck, A series of strange sounds came from its throat, and as it inhaled, the surrounding temperature also dropped suddenly. This is not the psychological effect of Levin et.al. Because a layer of frost visible to the naked eye has appeared on the surfaces of the surrounding tables and chairs. Thump. Harry fainted instantly, and Ronald shivered. Hermione originally wanted to raise her wand to resist, but as the other person inhaled, all the positive emotions in her body were sucked away, resulting in her being unable to use any strength at all. Cyrilla was stronger, but her arcane sword enchanted with the scorching ray was swung empty and did not cause any damage to the Dementors. This is the Dementor, the guardian of Azkaban. They are a unique life form unlike any magical creature and are impervious to most forms of harm. They feed on the positive emotions of intelligent creatures. After taking in too much happiness, they will split and give birth to a new Dementor. And once people are sucked in too much by them, they lose any positive emotions and end up like a dead fish. This point is actually similar to how ancient demons took negative emotions. Dementors will also starve to death if they don't get eating for a long time. So for the Ministry of Magic, Azkaban must have enough prisoners. In this regard, the Ministry of Magic and the Dementors have an agreement. The Dementors are responsible for guarding criminals and promise not to go out to cause trouble, while the Ministry of Magic is responsible for providing sufficient food. Once the Dementors run out of food, they lose control. For example, now, several Dementors who have been living on the food and clothing line for a long time, after seeing the delicious food in this carriage, became so greedy that they left the main army and planned to start a small business. But Levin clearly didn't want them to. Anti-evil magic circle. Even if he hasn't learned the Patronus charm, Levin still has ways to deal with them. Creatures like Dementors are born in the evil camp. As soon as the anti-evil magic circle came out, it was immediately isolated from the box. Anyone who tried to break in would immediately feel like being burned and writhe in pain. The helpless Dementors could only fly around the anti-evil magic circle, not daring to get close. But Levin wasn't satisfied yet. Although ordinary spells and elemental magic have no effect on Dementors, but force field magic is an exception, this kind of magic can not only cause physical damage, but also fight against incorporeal bodies such as ghosts. And Dementors are obviously incorporeal creatures. Missile Storm. Levin waved the magic spell, and arcane missiles flew out from the tip of his staff like a violent storm, shooting directly at the Dementor in front of him, causing it to collapse and flee. The threat was finally lifted. Levin picked out a few chocolate frogs from the pile of snacks he bought before and quickly distributed them to everyone in the cubicle. Eat, it will help if you eat some of this. Yewen also stuffed a piece into his mouth. There seemed to be a pleasant heat flowing to the tips of his toes and fingers, relieving the uneasiness caused by the Dementors. At this time, a scream full of terror suddenly sounded from the car outside the compartment. After hearing this, Cyrilla immediately ran out. Levin also dropped the chocolate and followed after seeing this. After regaining consciousness, Hermione wanted to follow, but she had just been sucked accidentally and was temporarily unable to do anything. In the train corridor, several Dementors were moving in and out of different compartments. Their hazy figures looked particularly haunting in the darkness. It's Pinello! Cyrilla shouted loudly. She found that in the corridor, the female student council president Pinello was surrounded by 4 Dementors. Cyrilla wanted to help deal with it, but her arcane sword once again lost its effect. Use force field spells. Levin warned, and then he stepped forward to meet him. The threat of the Dementors was too late, so Levin resorted to the quickest method, a psychic power that did not require cold spells, Psychic Blast. The terrifying spiritual power burst out, directly shocking all enemies in front. This direct attack to the soul can cause more immediate damage to Dementors than force field spells. The Dementor form in front of him was immediately shaken and dissipated. After finally regrouping, they hurriedly flew away, trying to get away from this murderous man. Levin hurried to Pinello's side and placed a piece of chocolate so thin it was in the mouth of the girl who was stunned. Pinello subconsciously grabbed Levin's hand as if he were grasping at a life-saving straw, feeling the power return to his body. The Dementors of Azkaban. Why are they here? They were probably sent to catch Sirius who escaped from prison, but obviously, the little pets of the Ministry of Magic have some ideas of their own. Levin complained while watching the Dementors who were gradually gathering around him warily. There are more of them. Perhaps Levin's psychic blast really hurt them and angered them, perhaps it was to avenge his compatriots. The Dementors all surged towards Levin, a mass of darkness. Levin, be careful. Pinello shuddered, she felt that the car suddenly became very cold, as if she was in a Siberian cold wave. Don't be afraid, Pinello. Think of happy things. Levin clenched the wand with a firm expression. But the chill penetrated his heart, and the fog began to blur his vision. Force field ball. Cyrilla finally enchanted the right magic this time, and the arcane sword flashed with aura, ready to go. At this moment, a voice came from behind Levin, go away. None of us are hiding Sirius Black under our robes, go away. It's Professor Lupin. He held the wand in his hand and scolded the Dementors sternly. The Dementors were unmoved, however, and seemed determined to suck a bite out of Levin's face. Call God Guards. Seeing that his advice was in vain, Lupin cast a spell decisively, and something silver appeared in Feng village and shot at the Dementors. It was a wolf, strong and tall, full of power. Wherever the patron saint passed, the Dementors backed away, but that was only a temporary retreat, and he still refused to leave. At least the fog lifted from Levin's eyes. Calling God to guard. Levin thought for a moment, then imitated Lupin and recited this spell. With so many living targets around, it's just a good time to contact the magic spell. An incompletely formed feathered serpent erupted from the top of the wand and rushed towards the Dementor. Beside him, Pinello looked at Levin's patron saint Quetzalcoatl with great fascination. It spread its huge wings and circled and swam in the carriage. Wherever it passed, the Dementors were avoiding each other. Calling God to guard. Another lion-like patron saint joined the battle. It was Cyrilla, the young lion of Sintra, who also successfully used this spell. Unwilling to admit defeat, the female student council president also began to try to cast the patron saint curse. She had actually known this spell for a long time, but had never successfully cast it. Calling God, Pinello gritted her teeth and persisted, recalling the scene where Levin saved her just now. Calling God's guard. A wisp of silver mist floated out from Pinello's wand, forming several almost shapeless white clouds. This is already an initial success. 0. Please give me flower. Sayuro, feeling inspired, Pinello continued to hold Levin's hand, as if infinite courage was injected into her body from there. Calling God to guard. This time, what escaped from the tip of her wand was no longer just a cloud, but a silvery animal. It flew nimbly away from them, followed closely by Kun, the lion, and the wolf, rushed towards the horde of Dementors. The four patron saints attacked together, with astonishing power. The Dementors began a general rout, all disappearing into the darkness, and finally being driven out of the carriage. Pinello's patron saint turned around and ran slowly towards its owner through the calm corridor of the train. They finally saw the whole thing clearly, a brilliant eagle. He is actually an eagle, and he is worthy of being the female student president of Ravenclaw. Siri praised with a smile. Pinello looked at his patron saint happily and stretched out his hand to touch the shining silver eagle, but it disappeared. What a good patron saint! Professor Lupin looked at the three of them in admiration, but his eyes stayed on Kwen for a long time. Professor, what's wrong with me? Levin asked strangely. It's extraordinary that you can successfully cast the patroness charm at your age. And Professor Lupin paused, then said, as far as I know, among the modern wizards who can use magical creatures as guardians, there is only one Dumbledore, but unlike you, his patroness is the Phoenix. After carefully looking at Levin, he came to the conclusion, perhaps you will do great things in the future. Dumbledore is the greatest white wizard in history. Zilly on the side nodded repeatedly, showing a proud expression. Even Pinello, who originally had a conflict with Li Xiao, was like this. At this moment, the Hogwarts Express made a long blast, the train started moving again, and the lights turned on again. Levin, thank you for saving me. Pinello held Levin's hand tightly and expressed gratitude. She seemed to be worried about Cyrilla being around. After she finished speaking, she thanked her best friend again and again, but her eyes still drifted to Laissez from time to time. After what happened just now, the relationship between the two seems to be different. Nothing, your patroness is really great. Levin waved his hands repeatedly. Without you, you guys, I would not have successfully used the patroness charm. Pinello said in a sincere tone. Then she shook her beautiful curly hair and said, Siri, Levin, I still have to patrol the train and comfort the frightened little wizard, so I'll go first. I need to talk to the driver. After confirming that Harry and Ronald were fine, Professor Lupin hurried past Levin and disappeared into the corridor. She is very responsible and a good girl. Professor Lupin admired as he looked at the girl's back. The three of them walked towards the box. In Levin's cubicle, Harry had woken up and sat back on the seat, but the cold sweat on his forehead showed that his condition was not optimistic. Are you okay? Levin asked strangely, didn't you eat those chocolate frogs? With that said, she strode away with firm steps. Oh, update 5/4, additional update 34/68. Ronald was huddled next to him, looking as bad as Harry was. Of course, she is the female student council leader of our Ravenclaw. Hermione had to take care of two useless men by herself, and was a little overwhelmed. As he spoke, he picked up the chocolate frogs from the ground and fed them into their mouths. These little guys jumped around and spread all over the floor. Look away, you know how to handle this situation. Professor Lupin walked in and looked at Levin with more approval. Excuse me, I can't stay here to help. The move is over, and updates will resume from today. He squeezed Harry's arm tightly as if it was his only hope. Seats? Levin replied casually. Chapter 180. Even though the chocolate frogs are jumping around on the ground for a long time, that doesn't make it any more unpalatable. Soon, Harry and Ronald, who were devastated by the Dementor attack, now looked much better. I don't understand, what happened just now? Harry wiped the cold sweat from his face and asked. He still couldn't figure out why he fainted. It's the Dementor, Harry, it sucked away your happiness. Hermione looked at Harry and his friends worriedly, and Ronald, are you really okay? Everyone looked at the two of them. The Dementors had the greatest impact on them. One of them fainted on the spot, and the other might as well have actually fainted. They both shook their heads. So Hermione briefly explained what had just happened. I feel weird, Ronald shivered and sniffed uneasily, it's like I can't be happy anymore. But none of you, fell off your seats. Harry said awkwardly. But my reaction is not as good as 987 falling down. Ronald was even more embarrassed, holding your hand or something. The two looked at each other and turned away at the same time. The tacit understanding made Hermione and Levin feel a little redundant. You are overreacting, not because you are weak. Levin saw through their thoughts at a glance. Dementors can evoke the most fearful things in people's hearts. The reason why we have not been so seriously hurt is because we have not experienced it. That level of fear. Everything you said is right, Levin. Ronald nodded. I recall the experience last semester, it was really bad. Harry was also thoughtful, he even recalled what happened to him as a baby. Then, their car became silent as Harry and Ronald silently healed their inner wounds. During the rest of the trip, except for a few words when Ginny came to visit after hearing about Harry's experience, they did not speak. Finally, the train stopped at Hogsmeade Station, everyone got off the train, and the scene was chaotic. The heavy rain that was bone-chilling kept falling, and it was freezing cold on the platform. "Freshmen, go this way," a familiar voice shouted. Hagrid's huge figure was at the other end of the platform, calling the frightened first-year students to come over and cross the lake in the traditional way. "Students from other grades, come this way." Percy and Pinello fulfilled their duties as student union presidents and organized the little wizards from other grades to move towards the other side of the platform. From a distance, Levin greeted Pinello and was pushed to a rough muddy path outside. There were at least 100 carriages waiting for the remaining students. There were some thestrals standing between the front of the carriage. There is no flesh on their bodies at all. The black fur is tightly attached to the skeleton, and every bone is clearly visible. Their heads are very much like the heads of fire dragons. Their eyes without pupils are white and stare intently. Wings grew out of the ridges between the bones. Big, black, leathery wings that looked like they should belong to a giant bat. In order to facilitate the care, Hermione rode in a carriage with Harry and Ronald, and she also took Neville Longbottom as a coolie. Levin and Shirley got into the next car. "Sorry, is there any room here?" When Levin got into the car, a trance-like voice behind him said. A girl with blonde hair and dripping wet poked her head in from outside the carriage and asked. Behind her stood a red-haired girl, looking at him secretly. "It's Luna Lovegood and Ginny Weasley." "Of course." Levin pulled the two of them into the carriage. After this summer vacation, they wrote that Luna has become a very familiar friend. Ginny also has a good relationship with them because of what happened last semester. Beware of colds. Siri pointed her thoughtful wand at the two of them, helping them dry their wet robes and hair. As all the little wizards got on the carriage lined up in a queue, creaking and swaying on the road. Sitting with familiar friends, Ginny became lively and asked curiously, "I have always been surprised that the carriage can move forward by itself. I wonder what the magic is? Can we learn it?" "That's not a curse. You're lucky. You just can't see the puller yet." Luna replied in a sing-song tone without knowing how to do it. Levin couldn't help but look at Luna. Her big silver eyes reflected the thestrals with bat wings. "Really, Levin?" Ginny couldn't believe it and subconsciously asked Levin for confirmation. In her mind, what Levin said was basically correct. Seeing Levin nodding, the girl became even more panicked. "Why can't I see?" She almost thought she was going crazy. "You are not crazy, your mind is as clear as mine." Luna then turned to stare at her companion, her expression became dazed again. But Ginny obviously misunderstood what she said. Although the two are good friends, Ginny is very aware of her partner's reputation. Luna, the crazy girl, is just as sane, which is not good at all. That animal is the thestral, a type of Pegasus. Only people who have directly witnessed death can see it. Levin looked at Ginny's tangled expression in amusement, and then thought about Luna who could see the thestral, and couldn't help but feel a little confused. "Apology, I'm sorry, you." "Don't worry, it's my mother." Luna answered the question before Levin asked the question. Levin nodded, secretly surprised by her insight into people's hearts. Although the crazy girl is crazy, she is not just crazy. As the carriage jolted, Ginny soon no longer cared about the thestral. She had to hold on to the armrests of the carriage and try her best to maintain her balance. Although falling into Levin's arms was romantic, it was also too embarrassing. The little girl is still thin-skinned. But Luna didn't care about this. She and Siri took turns bumping into Levin due to the shaking, as if they regarded this as some fun game. As the carriage got closer and closer to Hogwarts, there was a cry of surprise from the little wizards in front. "I saw the carriage driving towards two extraordinary wrought iron gates with stone pillars on both sides and a winged warthog on top of the pillars. Two hooded and terrifying dementors stood guard at the door." Suddenly, another cold and uncomfortable feeling hit them. Ginny was so frightened that she quickly shrank into the uneven seat. She didn't care about being reserved anymore and leaned directly into Levin's arms and closed her eyes. Levin didn't stop the little girl from rubbing against the warmth. He looked at the two dementors guarding the door and couldn't help but frown. "Don't tell me, these dementors are really good at playing. They say they are guarding the gates of Hogwarts, but they are actually here to collect tickets. What kind of ticket is it specifically?" "Of course, you will be sucked in when you enter the door." Many young wizards ahead were charged tolls. Seeing that it was their turn, Levin held down Cyrilla's hand that wanted to draw the sword and cast the spell himself. Extended Anti-Evil Array. In the process of jointly casting spells with Gina during the summer vacation in 1.8, Levin stole two metamagic techniques from the Dalaran mage, spell powerful spell expansion. Now, with the effect of spell expansion, Levin cast a huge anti-evil magic circle, enough to cover a large area near the Hogwarts school gate. Just as the two gatekeepers were about to open their doors, they immediately flew around as if their feet had been burned, if they had any, flying very high until they flew outside the anti-evil magic circle. At this time, they have been consumed to only 1/3 of their original size. Well, this whole day's tolls were collected in vain, and the money was lost. It was a big loss. The angry dementors could only hover above the anti-evil magic circle and dared not go down. Levin can guarantee they won't get another chance. Even if he doesn't actively maintain it, his anti-evil magic circle can last for at least 1 or 2 hours, which is enough for all the little wizards to enter the campus. He could hear many young wizards behind him applauding him. Chapter 181. After leaving the gate, the carriage drove wildly to the front of the castle, then came to a screeching halt. Following the flow of people, Levin, Cyrilla, Luna, and Ginny walked towards the castle entrance. There was a commotion ahead, and it sounded like Harry and Malfoy were having an argument. Ginny hesitated for a moment, looked at Levin, then at Harry, and then quickly ran over when she discovered that Ronald was also involved. She has always admired Harry Potter before, but I didn't expect that she also admires you. Luna's singing voice sounded in Levin's ears. I didn't know this originally. 17. As soon as she finished speaking, before Levin could answer, Shirley's teasing rang out. I didn't see it. Our great love saint is really good at attracting little girls. This kind of thing isn't something I can control. Levin couldn't help but smile bitterly. But I still feel a little proud inside. He didn't even do anything, but the famous love brain in the original work started to get entangled, which shows his charm. At this time, Malfoy's proud voice came from the front. Did you faint too, Weasley? Did that terrifying Dementor scare you too, Weasley? Levin ignored this mess because he knew Hermione could handle it. Sure enough, when he caught up with Harry and others, he could see Malfoy standing there stupidly, his mouth gagged by his own clothes. The quarrel is just a small episode before school starts. Soon, everyone arrived in the auditorium, except Harry and Ronald, who were called away by Professor McGonagall. As in previous years, thousands of burning candles floated over the Great Hall of Hogwarts. The firelight they radiate warms every student present. However, this year, the little wizards below were not as noisy as in previous years, and the auditorium seemed much deserted. This is not surprising. First they were robbed by bandits, and then their tickets were collected. The gangsters suffered greatly from the Dementors. Not to mention that there are still a bunch of Dementors floating above the auditorium. Through the magic ceiling, everyone can clearly see them hovering in the clouds, greedily watching the students of Hogwarts, as if they will rush down at any time to have a feast. This made all the students look sad and less interested. During the entire sorting ceremony, everyone remained silent and there was not even a hint of applause. This depressing atmosphere makes this year's freshmen dare not even express themselves. After the sorting, Principal Dumbledore took the stage to give a speech as usual. Looking at the frowning little wizards below, Dumbledore also sighed. The Dementors were just too much. He clapped his hands. A big red bird suddenly appeared from behind him and flew around the auditorium, singing cheerful songs as it flew. Hearing the songs of the birds, the students immediately felt that a warm power was rising from their hearts, nourishing their pale hearts. That's a phoenix. Levin heard Hermione's knowledge coming from the Gryffindor's table. Their singing has magical power. It is generally believed that it can strengthen the courage of those with a pure heart and release fear for those with a dirty heart. Welcome everyone back to Hogwarts. Seeing that the students in the audience had relaxed a lot, Dumbledore said, I have a few very important things to inform you. The first is that our school currently welcomes several Dementors from Azkaban, who are sent by the Ministry of Magic to perform official duties. You all probably already know this, because they conducted a search on the Hogwarts Express. After saying this, the audience suddenly became commotion. The students cursed and cursed, many cried in grievance, and some even clamored to complain to the Ministry of Magic. This is easy to understand. Think about it, you left home with your school bag, took the train, ate hot pot, and sang songs, and suddenly you were robbed by Dementors. Is there any royal law for this? Is there any law for this? So, a day without Dementors is a good day. Regarding this situation, Dumbledore did not stop him. After all, the students still had to vent, and the students' complaints would also help him put pressure on the Ministry of Magic. After everyone calmed down, he said, it is true that the Dementors did bad things during the search, but what makes me proud is that the little wizards in our school were able to successfully resist and even expel them. Dumbledore didn't need to say much. Even if they hadn't heard of it, most people already guessed who this person was. Levin had done much more important things than just expelling Dementors. The little wizards in the auditorium all poked their heads in their seats and looked at Levin. The Ravenclaws were no longer as indifferent to others as in previous years. Now they seemed to be proud, sitting upright. But Dumbledore's twist here. This doesn't mean that all our little wizards can provoke them. They are stationed at all entrances to the school grounds, Dumbledore continued. During their stay here, I must make it clear that no one is allowed to leave the school without permission. Dementors are not to be subjected to tricks. Or the deception of disguise. Not even an invisibility cloak. Levin smiled, obviously speaking to Harry. The reason why Dementors can see through disguises is simple, their vision is different from ordinary people. They can't see anything normal, they can only see the emotions coming from the soul. This visual mode is more powerful than infrared detection devices. Therefore, living creatures, without exception, are very conspicuous in their eyes, and the mere invisibility cloak cannot block them. From this point of view, they are much stricter than the guards who check the QR code. Dementors don't understand requests or excuses by nature. So I warn each of you, don't give them any excuse to hurt you. I'm counting on the prefects, as well as our newly appointed head boy and head girl. Chairman, you must ensure that no student will conflict with a Dementor. After all, Snape had wanted to be a defense against the dark arts professor for more than a day or two. Okay. Then let's have a banquet. At the professor's desk, other teachers were wearing their best robes, but Professor Lupin looked ragged. This couldn't help but make the little wizards doubt his strength. Haig's face turned red, his eyes were lowered as he looked at his big hands, and his big smile was hidden behind his messy and tangled black beard. There was only sparse applause in the auditorium. The old bat was patrolling the auditorium with a look that was almost murderous, as if he wanted to record the faces of every applauding student, which made the already sparse applause instantly become more deserted. Next up is Professor Lupin, who will fill the defense against the Dark Arts Professor vacancy. More happily, Dumbledore continued to announce, this year, I am pleased to welcome 2 new teachers to our team. After experiencing 2 unreliable professors, Quirinus Quirrell and Gilderoy Lockhart, the little wizards understood a truth. As soon as he finished speaking, a burst of loud applause came from the direction of Gryffindor. Everyone is actually used to this. In the entire auditorium, only some well-meaning students and the little wizards who had seen Lupin's true abilities on the train were applauding. But Levin knows very well that the current incident does not stem from a position conflict, but from an old conflict from his student days. Following Dumbledore's order, the gold plates and goblets in front of everyone were finally filled with food and drinks. Making matters worse was Snape. The first is the Care of Magical Creatures class. Since Professor Ketleben has retired, we chose Hagrid to take his place. The new semester has finally begun. Even professors can be bad people with malicious intentions or ignorant fools. Chapter 182. On the first day of the new semester, Levin got up early and faced the new semester's courses with full preparation. But when Levin arrived at the auditorium, he discovered that his first breakfast of the new semester was a mess. At this moment, countless owls are circling over the auditorium. The spectacle is comparable to the day Levin forced Lockhart away. Owls will throw things down when they find an opportunity, letters, feathers, or whatever Ollie gave them, and the whole table will be ruined. To make matters worse, a large proportion of the letters that were sent were red howler letters. Levin experienced the horror of this kind of letter last semester. I still remember that it was also the first breakfast of the new semester. Thanks to them, only a few warriors in the whole auditorium are still enduring the violent storm, referring to bird droppings, and lightning and thunder, referring to the roaring letter, and hide under the long table to eat. Everyone else was forced into the foyer. How is this going? Levin couldn't help but said. Seeing Levin, Zhang ran out of the crowd excitedly and shared gossip with him. These are letters of complaint from parents about the Dementors' illegal search of the Hogwarts Express yesterday. It's actually pretty good here, Marietta said. Her mother told her the office of the Minister of Magic is now inundated with howling letters. The girl quietly covered her mouth, looking gloating. She also handed Levin a copy of today's Daily Prophet. Levin took a look and found Fudge's figure on it. On the screen, he no longer had the templated smile of the past, replaced by a nervous look on his face. The accompanying text below is quite telling. First of all, it was mentioned that the cause of the matter was Sirius's escape from Azkaban, and Baiji had to send Dementors to hunt him down. The text highlights the accident of the prison escape and Fudge's unpreparedness, making it appear that sending out the Dementors was a last resort. There is no mention that some people escaped from prison because of poor management of Azkaban, and in the end it was the incompetence of the Minister of Magic. Continuing to read on, Levin was not mentioned in the report. It was only said that the students at Hogwarts resisted tenaciously and minimized the losses. No young wizard went to the Holy Land. This is about digging out good things from bad things. If you think about it carefully, you will understand that it is a glorious thing that no one is hospitalized. Isn't that a matter of course? This kind of thing that should be done in the first place is very rare in this article. It seems that if you can do this, Fudge should be awarded the Order of Merlin. And even if there is credit, it should belong to the Levin people who actually expelled the Dementors. How shameless. Levin put down the newspaper angrily. Fudge should be in big trouble. Marietta sneered beside Zhang. My mother told me that he was the direct orderer of the Dementors stationed in Hogwarts. He has to take full responsibility for this. Levin's mind moved and he thought of Gina and others from the Ministry of Magic. Even before the start of school, Levin hinted to Gina that she would be opposed to sending out Dementors. Even if he and Fudge temporarily become enemies, he would not hesitate to do so. As the Dementors cause more trouble, the Fudge government will lose more and more points. By that time, it would become rare for Gianna to insist on opposing opinions. Her status in the Ministry of Magic can only rise further. See, foresight is also very effective in political speculation. You know, Fudge's mentally retarded operation this time offended not only ordinary wizards, but also a lot of pure bloods, as well as high-ranking officials and dignitaries. This is the only good thing about the magical world, because the population is not large, and the children of the rich and the common people have to go to the same school. In short, it is impossible for Fudge to fool him so easily this year. Since he had to rush to class, Zhang left in a hurry after chatting for a few words. Levin looked around the crowd and suddenly found Hermione greeting him excitedly. Levin walked up and found her with Harry and Ronald. The three of them were enjoying a pile of breakfast they had rescued from the owls. This is also a rare occasion for little wizards to have something to eat for breakfast. What are you talking about? Here you are, Levin. Haven't you had breakfast yet? Hurry up and eat. Seeing Levin coming over, Hermione piled all the remaining food on the plate in front of Levin without hesitation. Oh, thank you. Levin nodded, grabbed the bacon, eggs and toast from the plate very naturally, put a sandwich in his mouth. Harry and Ronald protested loudly, we're not full yet, Hermione. You are too partial to Levin. Faced with the complaints from her companions, Hermione crossed her arms and said matter-of-factly, you just haven't eaten enough, but Levin is completely hungry. But, you gave him too much. Ronald looked at Levin's sandwich and swallowed, this food is enough for 2 people. But Levin has a big appetite. Hermione said naturally, in the past, this small amount of food was enough to make him full. The words are full of knowledge of Levin's appetite. Harry sighed as he watched the girl holding her chin with one hand and admiring the boy as he devoured the food. He understood that in front of such a girl who fell in love, nothing could be said. People just turn their elbows in the opposite direction, just to harm their friends and benefit their loved ones. What can you do? He had to change the subject. We were talking about class selection. By the way, Levin, do you know what it's like to take advantage of get out of class? You've asked the right person. I was planning to take a divination class, so I did some research. Levin swallowed the last bite of bacon and stacked the sandwich with the remaining ingredients. Then Levin, tell me. Hermione urged. Ronald on the side was surprised when he heard this. Aren't some people very confident in their own choices? Why do they still need to refer to Levin's opinion? Hermione was furious, blushing, and about to throw the pen at Ronald. Levin stopped her and then said, actually, I don't like divination classes very much. Professor Trelawney is extremely unreliable in this regard. Her class content is nothing more than asking you to make tea leaves, look at the crystal ball, and then start talking nonsense that you will soon break out of. Stories about bad luck and so on. She just likes to scare students with this kind of thing, every year. But everything has its pros and cons. Because of this, it is generally easy to pass the divination class exam. According to the experience of previous seniors, you only need to make up a prophecy about your own encounters to pass. If this prophecy is about your misfortune, then there is still a chance to get high scores. To sum up, this is a course for bastards. It has no use except for good-looking transcripts. On the contrary, arithmetic divination is a bit difficult, and mathematical formulas are quite challenging for students from wizarding families. How come there is such a professor in Hogwarts? Hermione was immediately dissatisfied. She hated such professors who misled students the most. In fact, I have to be fair to Professor Trelawney. Divination is about metaphysics and talent. People without talent are useless no matter how much they learn, and most people in the magic world have no talent. If you want me, courses like accounting should not be offered in the 3rd grade, Levin explained to her. He could understand the eagerness of a top student like Hermione to learn, but some things just depended on talent. Seeing that Hermione was still aggrieved, Levin had no choice but to suggest, if you want to learn some less metaphysical divination spells, I can teach you some prophecy school magic in private at that time, which is guaranteed to be more reliable than this Lashiza divination spell. Really? Hermione was immediately happy when she heard that she had learned something new. It's a deal. Ronald, on the other hand, shook his head. I don't understand why you are so excited when you hear that there is knowledge that does not require examinations and you need to learn it. Harry also agreed. After listening to Levin's words, he had already made up his mind to take a divination class. Sure enough, no matter what you say, Hermione is better than these two ordinary people. Suddenly, Harry thought of something else and asked, Levin, you also took the Care of Magical Creatures class this semester, right? Of course, Levin nodded, but that's just out of support for Hagrid. To be honest, I don't have high expectations for his class. Listening to Levin's answer, the smile on Harry's face became awkward. Thinking back to the textbook Hagrid chose, the book about biting monsters, Harry suddenly felt that Levin's judgment was quite reliable. Since breakfast was all eaten by Levin and Ronald left early and tried to find a way to go to the Hogwarts kitchen for food. Levin was left sitting with Hermione. Levin finished all the food, and before the two of them were about to leave for class, he suddenly said, Hermione, you really should learn how to manage time from me. Yes, no one is better at time management than you. You can become good friends with 3 or 4 girls at the same time, and seduce a few girls in the lower grades. Hermione said in a sour tone. Obviously, she knew everything about what happened on the carriage yesterday, and she didn't know who the BD was who revealed it. Levin said speechlessly, I mean, even if you want to surpass me in grades, you have to be more realistic and take classes selectively instead of taking all the classes at once. For example, if there are divination, arithmancy, and Muggle studies courses at the same time, you only need to choose one. My suggestion is arithmancy. Ah, you've discovered it already. Hermione looked surprised. How did you know I applied for a time turner? Not only do I know, I also understand that you have already used that thing. He saw Hermione looking at him curiously with a look like a little girl. Levin pushed up the non-existent glasses on the tip of his nose and said calmly, details can reveal your behavior. For example, you know in advance that you have to prepare breakfast. For example, you are doing homework after class even though there is no class. I need all you do is reason. That's it. Hermione suddenly realized. Levin glanced at the amulet that was still around Hermione's neck, and continued, if you insist on using the time turner, my suggestion is to eat more and bring more food with you. You know, you go from breakfast to lunch, there are not 1, but 3 classes in between. The total time is actually equivalent to breakfast to dinner, if you don't prepare in advance. It's like going to class all day without lunch. It feels really uncomfortable. When Hermione heard this, she suddenly understood. She hurriedly left, following the example of Harry and Ronald, and went to the kitchen to look for food. Levin's proposal was indeed important to her. Without this reminder, she would have been hungry all morning. Looking at the girls retreating back, Levin smiled strangely. In fact, just now, Hermione also made the same mistake that Harry and Ronald made on the train. The reason why Hermione revealed her use of the time turner in front of Levin was not because of any details or reasoning. It was because she was wearing the amulet Levin made for her last semester. You know, that amulet has the teleport rune drawn by Levin himself. Levin could sense it from a long distance away. Now, Levin can 3 identical runes were sensed. One seemed to be in the direction of the kitchen, the other in the direction of the Gryffindor lounge, and the third, at the door of the Great Hall. It's rare for Miss Know-It-All to be rash and perform a difficult operation like triple conversion using the time converter for the first time. Then something went wrong. Levin hurried towards the kitchen and met 3 people inside waiting for the elf to cook. Hey, Levin, why are you here? Are you not full yet? Hermione looked at him in surprise. I'm already full, Levin replied while ordering food from the elf. I'm already full, but some little fool hasn't been full yet, and I'm here to make up for her mistake. Little fool? Hermione frowned when she heard this. It's that girl you deceived before again? She actually came to prepare meals for her in person. Listening to the strong jealousy in the girl's tone, I felt angry and funny. Haha, if you can, come back and tell me this at noon today. Why, you can do such a thing, why don't you let me say it? Hermione immediately got angry. Just wait, I will talk to you like this even at noon. It's a deal, lying is just a puppy. Not far away, Harry and Ronald suddenly became excited as they listened to the 2 parents-in-law arguing. It seems there is something good to watch at noon. Chapter 183. Okay, Hermione, eat slowly and don't choke. No one will compete with you. Looking at Hermione who was devouring food in front of her, Levin whispered. Before Levin could finish speaking, Hermione swallowed a mouthful of cake, then held her chest and made a aha sound. Levin quickly patted her back, and it took a long time for her to calm down. It was also his first experience interacting with someone who used a time turner. This feeling was amazing. A few minutes ago, Hermione looked like she didn't have much appetite, but this Hermione ate even more exaggeratedly than Ronald. Levin, how did you know I was here? Hermione looked up and asked after taking a swig of water. Levin smiled slightly. Although I have never used a time turner, when it comes to time management, you are not as good as me. By the way, didn't I remind you before? Let you prepare more food. Levin asked strangely, why are you still so hungry? It's not because of you, Hermione said aggrievedly. I had an argument with you in the kitchen, and I was so angry that I left without even taking the food. Now I use the time turner to come back to look for food. It was only after you came back that you remembered that you were already in the kitchen when you first used the time turner. Levin said what she had not said. Hermione nodded pitifully. It's rare for a highly intelligent and academic woman to show such embarrassment, which almost made Levin laugh out loud. Sure enough, if you plan how to use the time turner in advance, even a top student like Hermione will be confused. In fact, the whole process is actually very simple. Hermione came to the cafeteria in the morning. After discovering the chaos in the cafeteria, she realized that she was late and couldn't get breakfast, so she went straight to get out of class. After the divination class, Hermione used the time turner for the first time and returned before breakfast time. She rushed to the cafeteria in advance and quickly rescued a batch of food before the owls came. She met Levin while sharing it with Harry and Ronald. After that, under Levin's reminder, she went to the cafeteria to prepare food, and then went to the number divination at the same time. After the numerology get out of class, she had to use the time turner to go back in time because she was taking Muggle studies. After Muggle studies, she would have to take another transfiguration class before reaching noon and entering real lunchtime. If such a set of procedures were followed, it would be equivalent to her taking 4 major classes in a row, that is, a whole day of classes, but only eating 1 meal. No one can stand this. So after using the time turner for the second time, Hermione thought about going back to breakfast time, eating another meal, and then going to Muggle studies. However, after the change, she discovered that when there was still food in the auditorium, she came to the auditorium early in the last cycle, so she did not dare to go in now. You must know that there is a basic requirement for using a time converter, which is that it cannot be discovered by yourself in different timelines. This does not mean that it is possible to cause a tragedy in which one kills oneself. Even if the person using the time turner is very rational and fully capable of communicating with himself, he cannot do so. Otherwise it will cause confusion in the time flow. Because there have been many tragic precedents for this kind of thing, the Ministry of Magic has now restricted the use of time turners on a large scale. Hermione didn't have a deep enough understanding of this, but she had always followed the rules and strictly abided by the rule of not being seen by yourself. In fact, the reason why Levin stayed away from good things like time turners was because of this rule. He knows himself too well. With his powerful perception, whenever there is a slight intersection between yourself and action, you will be discovered by yourself from a long distance away. Back to business, when Hermione thought that she could still go to the kitchen, herself in the last cycle ran into the kitchen again, blocking her way again. She had no choice but to wait outside the kitchen, waiting for her last self to leave before going in. However, considering that preparing food in the kitchen also takes time, if you delay it like this, you will probably be late for your Muggle studies class. Fortunately, Levin showed up at the right time with food, which prevented her from going hungry. Hermione, I have always thought that you are the smartest little witch in Hogwarts. Why did you act stupid this time? Levin couldn't help but tease. It's all because of you. Who asked you to hug people in public? The girl rolled her eyes at Levin. Levin was confused by what he said. You said I seduced a little girl yesterday, but I reluctantly admitted it. What the hell is hugging someone in public? When did I do this? Is it possible that my future self also uses a time turner? Levin thought about it and immediately sensed the teleport rune on Hermione's amulet, and then he understood. In fact, it was the first time Hermione used the time turner. Hermione didn't need to spend so long in the auditorium at all. She could just grab her breakfast and leave. This way, she could still leave time for her future self to have breakfast, instead of occupying the auditorium alone for so long and blocking out his future self. In fact, the reason why she stayed in the auditorium all the time was to block Levin and find out who the girl he was hugging Lulu was. But in the end she didn't understand it, and instead got angry with Levin, which led to her current predicament. Just now, Levin also wanted to understand the general cause and effect. Previously, Hermione was being weird about him in the auditorium, becoming good friends with 3 or 4 girls at the same time, and seducing a few girls in the lower grades. The point is not the last half of the sentence, but the first half sentence. However, Levin did not expose Hermione's little thoughts, but shook his head and smiled. You will understand everything by noon, and then you will learn how to bark like a dog. Why is it noon again? What do you mean? Hermione curled her lips and wrinkled her little nose. The secret must not be revealed, Levin said, gently wiping the corners of the girl's mouth like a coaxing child. The girl didn't move away, and while being rubbed obediently, she childishly stared at the boy in front of her who she loved and hated. After sensing the position of the amulet for a while, Levin raised a new topic. I previously suggested that you only stay in the number divination class. How do you feel about this class? Much better than the divination class. Speaking of this, Hermione immediately became interested and said happily, you are right, this class is really amazing. The trigonometric functions you taught me before can also be used in this class. Because of this, Professor Septima Vector likes me very much. She said that few young wizards have such a high level of mathematics. After that, she complained about the first course again. In comparison, the divination class is different. I was confused throughout the class. Many parts were based on guesswork. Professor Trelawney is not like a prophet, but more like a magician. It's not advisable to step on someone, girl. But Levin still agreed, so I said, don't worry about her final exam and just make up a prediction. Hermione was still aggrieved. Professor Trelawney also said that the aura surrounding me is very small, my ability to accept future resonance is very poor, and I am a witch with little talent. Zero request flower saw Euro as a top student. Hermione has always been liked by professors in various subjects. This is the first time she has received such evaluation, and the little girl feels extremely aggrieved. You must have contradicted Professor Trelawney in class, Levin asked. That's not even a backlash, Hermione said angrily. It's the pattern of tea leaves. She thinks Harry's tea leaves are a sign of something bad, but I don't think so. Oh, it's unknown. Levin felt very happy. So, who does she predict will die this year? Trelawney predicts the death of one person every year, which is her specialty. It's Harry, Hermione said. It is indeed him. Levin nodded. Just refer to Lockhart and you will know that the more famous a person is, the more suspenseful the prediction is, and the more likely he is to attract the attention of all students. Trelawney's death prophecies every term are a gimmick in itself, an advertisement to attract young wizards. After all, how can there be a death prophecy that doesn't provide a date of death? That's the same as no prophecy. After all, people will die. Zero, I have now begun to consider not taking divination classes in the future, Hermione said and became happy again, but the next class is Muggle Studies, and I thought, a wizard's perspective on Muggles must be interesting. So you are conducting a research on wizards Muggles and how wizards study Muggles. Levin couldn't help but complain. She was a Muggle-born wizard who went to study Muggle studies, either for water lessons or for this kind of Matryoshka doll research. If you think so, you're right. Hermione always felt that Levin's statement was sweet. But then I thought about it, and there was nothing wrong with his summary. The two chatted like this for a while, and then Hermione decided to go to class. But before leaving, she still wanted to figure out the problem. That is her own voice. Suddenly he took out his wand and pointed it at Levin. Of course, Levin couldn't break the time loop, so he had to say, sorry, our secrets at that time cannot be revealed for the time being. If Levin hadn't stepped between them in time, she would have been seen by her past self. Hermione snorted, lowered her head and was silent for about 2 seconds. Hermione's body stiffened suddenly, and she knew that voice all too well. With that said, he silently cast an advanced invisibility technique, causing Hermione's figure to disappear into the air. This time you know the dangers of the time turner, right? Levin said with a smile, remember to bark like a dog at noon. Why haven't you figured it out yet with your smart mind? Levin couldn't help laughing out loud, but you will probably understand it soon. Hermione, who was invisible in her arms, immediately left quickly, only then did she remember that this was her earliest self, when she had just left the Gryffindor lounge and was heading to the Great Hall for breakfast. Hermione from behind quickly caught up. As he spoke, Levin suddenly hugged it in his arms, then turned around, facing the corridor. Activated rope 4. Levin, what are you doing there? Levin, who was the girl who was hugging you before? Just tell me. I swear, I will never be angry, Hermione said with a kind expression on her face. She looked around, but when she couldn't find anyone, she said, Levin, where was that girl just now? Who is she? At the same time, a familiar voice sounded from the other side of the corridor. Chapter 184. In fact, Levin and Hermione didn't have to wait until lunchtime to meet each other, because Ravenclaw and Gryffindor had their second period transfiguration class together. As soon as the two of them looked at each other across the classroom, the girl lowered her head in shame and did not dare to look at him. She had understood everything and realized that she had misunderstood the boy. Whether it's hooking up with others or cuddling, what she has been doubting all along is actually herself, her future self. She brought this whole thing on herself. Today's lesson is animagus. Of course, it's just a brief introduction. Professor McGonagall did not expect a third-year wizard to learn such a complex spell. The professor transformed in front of the class into a tabby cat with traces of glasses around his eyes. This demonstration caused thunderous applause in the classroom. The little wizards were all motivated and geared up to study animagus seriously, hoping that they could do it in the future. But soon, they realized that they were still far away from becoming a real animagus. This kind of transformation was not something that a student could complete in school. For example, just taking the first step of animagus is something that ordinary little wizards cannot do. Because for a whole month, the little wizard must continue to hold a single mandrake leaf in his mouth. If the leaf leaves the mouth or is swallowed, the process must start again. Even if you complete this and meet a series of other demanding conditions, you are still far from successful. 527 users must wait for a suitable thunderstorm before they have the opportunity to try their first transformation. This is an almost impossible task for a school student. From this point of view, Harry's father and his gang are really defiant. Although Levin had already learned the prototype of animagus and the druid's wild transformation, at this time, he was still studying relevant knowledge seriously. After all, he still wants to help several of his female friends become animagus like the predators. But he can't expect them to all have druid talents. After class, Levin immediately blocked Hermione. The girl, who knew she was guilty, reluctantly agreed to fulfill the contract at Levin's urging, but proposed to change the dog's barking to a cat's barking. She just got a new cat this semester, and the cat's meowing seems to be more acceptable. So, under Levin's excited gaze, Hermione called out meow in a low voice, which almost made his face bleed. The price was that Hermione didn't dare see him all afternoon. It wasn't until after dinner that Hermione had to follow Harry and Ronald to find Levin because she was so proud of the rag. The girl came up and said, "Have you heard?" Levin was confused when he said this. "What did I hear? I heard that there is a strange guy wandering in the Benlang territory. What's the wolf leader? Who's wandering around?" Hermione didn't get Levin's clue at all and explained seriously, "The thing is like this, Malfoy was injured in Hagrid's class. We are going to visit Hagrid, will you go?" "Of course I want to go, Hagrid can be considered my friend." Levin looked at the three pairs of anxious eyes and nodded. "I remember that Slytherin took magical zoology with Gryffindor. You have to tell me what happened." "But, Harry." Levin glanced at Harry. Sirius, who escaped from prison, was imprisoned for informing and killing Harry's parents, so many people believed that his first target after escaping from prison was Harry. More than one professor has asked Harry to stay in Hogwarts and not leave the castle. In this regard, Hermione also agreed with this idea. "Harry, I think you should stay, we will tell you everything when we get back, after all the edge of the Forbidden Forest is also within the scope of the castle." Harry found an excuse and said, "This is also within the protection range of the Dementors. Although they are annoying, they can really block Sirius Black, right?" "Okay, if you insist." Levin nodded. He also knew that the betrayer was not black, and there was no way this black dog could be harmful to Harry. "If we leave now, we should have enough time to talk to him." The four of them hurried to the door, telling Levin everything about the class. From the moment he took out the textbook, Malfoy has been looking for trouble for Hagrid. Even though the store clerk told everyone how to open the Monster Book of Monsters, he pretended to be ignorant and mocked Hagrid. Harry started from the beginning. He also teased me and Harry about fainting on the train. Ronald also added. "Oh, can't you get to the point?" Hermione said impatiently. Hagrid prepared for the hippogriff for the first lesson, which is a magical creature with a danger level of the hippogriff said hello to Harry, and Harry stepped forward voluntarily. Who knew that Malfoy also wanted to participate in order to fight with Harry, and then he was scratched by Buckbeak for being disrespectful. "Actually, this is all Malfoy's own responsibility," Ronald reminded. "Harry did a great job. I bet that if it weren't for jealousy, Harry would have successfully ridden Buckbeak. Malfoy didn't dare face Buckbeak at all." Levin believes this. With Malfoy's shrewdness, he would never rashly try to cause trouble in front of such a dangerous creature. Unless jealousy goes to your head. Malfoy is stupid, that's true, but I don't think Hagrid should have prepared such a dangerous creature in the first place. Hermione said her thoughts unceremoniously. Instead of facing Levin's soft cuteness, Harry didn't how lucky you were to have your neck broken by Buckbeak. That's why Malfoy shouldn't have provoked Buckbeak and called him a big ugly beast. He deserves it. Ronald and Hermione were now at odds with each other, neither giving in to the other. Harry, on the other hand, was sandwiched between the two friends with a troubled look on his face. They weren't so noisy just today. In addition to the Malfoy injury incident, Ronald and Hermione had quarreled several times because of their incompatibility with each other's pets. The four people quickly crossed the wet grass and came to Hagrid's hut. They knocked on the door and a voice shouted, "Come in." Hagrid sat at his scrubbed wooden table wearing only his shirt, his hunting dog teeth, and his head resting on Hagrid's lap. The four of them knew at a glance that Hagrid had drunk a lot of wine. There was a single-handled wine glass in front of him that was as big as a bucket. "I'm afraid this is a new record." Hagrid wondered for a long time, then said angrily after recognizing the person, "I don't think Hogwarts has ever had a teacher who only worked for one day." "You haven't been expelled, Hagrid?" Hermione asked in surprise, not wanting to blame Harry and Ronald. "Hogwarts shouldn't be so quick to fire professors, Dumbledore is not that kind of person." "Not yet," Hagrid said sadly, taking another sip of wine from the single-handled wine glass, but it's just a matter of time, isn't it, in Malfoy? How is he now? Ronald asked after they all sat down. Is the injury not serious? Madame Pomfrey tried her best to treat him, Hagrid said dully, but he still said it was in pain, bandaged up, and still moaning. He's pretending, Harry said immediately, Madame Pomfrey can cure anything. She made half of my bones grow back last year. Malfoy will try his best to make trouble out of it. Needless to say, the school directors must have known about it, Hagrid said sadly, they think I've trespassed. We should let the hippogriff come on stage later. Complete the flobber caterpillar or something else. What to do next? I thought I could get the first lesson done. This is all my fault. Malfoy deserves it all, Hermione said honestly. We are all witnesses, Harry said. You said that if the hippogriff was offended, it would attack. Why did Malfoy not listen carefully? We need to tell Dumbledore what happened at that time. Yeah, don't worry, Hagrid, we'll all support you. Ronald said. Cheer up, Hagrid. We are all looking forward to your class tomorrow. Levin also encouraged. Tears flowed from the crow's feet of Hagrid's small black eyes. After this happened, you are still looking forward to my class? Ugh, of course, I'm interested in magical creatures. In fact, I'm also interested in Buckbeak. Levin smiled and patted Hagrid on the arm. But, Hagrid, you can't drink anymore. I think you need to make some preparations, such as sending Buckbeak away or changing your courses. Malfoy will definitely not give up. Levin suggested. Hagrid, Levin has a point. You've had enough to drink, Hagrid, Hermione said firmly. She took the tankard off the table and went outside to pour the wine. Ah, you may be right. Hagrid said, struggling to stand up from the chair and following Hermione to the outside of the library. They heard a loud splash of water. What is he doing? Harry asked nervously, just as Hermione came in with an empty wine glass. What did he do? Harry said nervously. Just then Hermione came in, holding the goblet. He's got his head in the bucket, Hermione said, putting the tankard away. Hagrid came back, his long hair and beard were soaked, and he wiped the water from his eyes. He himself also chose the class of protecting magical objects. If he had to face a group of disgusting flobber armyworms in a daze for a class, he would just be shooting himself in the foot. Ah, what are you doing? He suddenly thought of something, startling the four of them. I just remembered that you can't run around after dark, Harry. And you three. If you are really worried, you might as well look up the relevant laws and cases about magical creatures harming people. I guess it will be used soon. Levin said goodbye to the three of them and replied. Suddenly, his movements stopped. No, I don't recommend using Flober's adhesive band either. Levin quickly refused after hearing this. Sorry, I have to send you back to school. Hagrid was worried and guilty at the same time. You don't want to see me again after dark. I don't deserve this. 11 then, how should I choose? Hagrid asked humbly. After experiencing the blow of the Malfoy incident, he seemed to be less willful. Arriving at Ravenclaw's lounge. You should listen to Levin, Hagrid. Hermione said with some pride, after Lockhart was captured last semester, Levin personally gave us several defense against the dark arts classes. His classes were welcomed by everyone. He is very experienced in this area. It's much better now. Hagrid said, shaking his head like a dog and splashing water on Harry and Ronald. I said, it's great that you came to see me. And Levin, your suggestions are very good. Okay. Maybe, I could start with the Flobber's armyworm. They're very safe. Thank you, Levin. I think I can go to the Forbidden Forest to search to see if there are any of these magical creatures you mentioned. After receiving the clear instructions, Hagrid's confidence returned, and he slapped Levin with his big hand. Shoulders. Update 5/4, additional update 35/68. Hagrid strode up to Harry, grabbed his arm, and pulled him to the door. Facts have proved that his move was extremely wise. I personally think that for a popular class, safety is the first factor, and the second factor is attraction, Levin said. Especially if you have just gotten into trouble and need to prove your ability quickly to open up the situation quickly. In this regard, I recommend creatures such as ball escapers, moon-crazy beasts, and fairies. They are not only safe, but also look cute and lovable. Levin subconsciously took a few steps back. After returning to the castle, looking at Hagrid's retreating figure from the door, Harry was still a little worried. What do you think Malfoy will do to him? Staring at Harry blankly, as if he had just realized that he was here. Chapter 185. The next day, it was Levin's turn to take magical creatures class. He was very happy to see that Hagrid was no longer depressed and had regained his liveliness. He greeted the little wizards Ravenclaw and Hufflepuff with his usual loud voice. Everyone come to this fence and make sure everyone can see me. Hagrid led everyone to an open space outside the Forbidden Forest. Now, what we need to do is open the textbooks. He gently touched the spina of the Monster Book of Monsters with his hand, and the sinister book opened its mouth obediently. The little wizards followed suit, and all the monster books were at their disposal. That's great. You all mastered the correct way to open this book. I think it is very interesting. The smooth start gave Hagrid the confidence to start the class. However, many young wizards looked curiously at the hippogriff in the paddock in the distance. The news of Malfoy's injury had spread throughout the campus. Hagrid cleared her throat and said loudly, "Today we want to introduce to you, the fairy. A little thing less than 5 inches tall, like a miniature human with wings, crawled out of Hagrid's pocket and flew to the tips of his fingers. If you look closely, you will find that it has a delicate face and the wings on its back are similar to those of insects, but much more colorful. Hagrid's thick fingertips are enough for it to sit down, and the little guy's wings are flapping gently, looking very cute. At least the little witches in the class had their attention immediately. Fairies are not very intelligent and generally live in woodlands or forest clearings. They are vain creatures and often allow wizards to use them as decorations. In fact, at Christmas time, fairies often come forward to volunteer. Serves as a Christmas tree decoration. Hagrid introduced fairies to the little wizards. Actually, it's very easy to catch some fairies. You can make a beautiful treehouse and put it in the forest to trap the hidden fairies. They are so vain. As long as you let them live in it, they will be very happy. Obedient. After Hagrid said that, he pointed to the forest not far away. The girls all wanted to raise one of these cute creatures, so they happily made their own tree houses. The enthusiasm of the little wizards also made Hagrid very happy. He took the little fairy and walked around among the little eagles and little badgers, constantly showing them this little cutie. What a beautiful little guy, isn't it? The boys also enjoyed the present, but they were more interested in the hippogriff in the distance, but with Malfoy's lessons learned, no one dared to challenge and tame this ferocious magical creature. Levin quickly completed the making of the tree house. He didn't even have to do it himself. As a druid he just had to wave his hand, and the branches and vines would grow into a beautiful fist on their own. When he went into the forest to look for fairies, the bushes and trees soon told him where they were. These little creatures cannot speak and can only communicate with their companions by making high-pitched buzzing sounds, so it will be very lively when a group of fairies gather together. When Levin followed the sound and walked over to the monkey, the group of fairies with wings of various colors were silent for a moment, and then there was a buzzing noise. The natural scent of the druid is very attractive to them. Levin didn't even need to take out the bookstore. They flew to Levin and circled around her, vying to show off their beauty. So Levin showed them the exquisite castle woven from branches and vines. The fairies immediately understood what Levin meant. There was a castle here that was in desperate need of the most beautiful fairies. So a small beauty pageant started in front of Levin. After a fierce election, 7 of the most beautiful fairies, whose wings corresponded to the 7 colors of the rainbow, happily entered Levin's castle. Levin completed the task and won the envious eyes of everyone. The little witches rushed to get close to each other and wanted to borrow Levin's castle to see. No way, although fairies are cute, they also have very high aesthetic standards. Generally, the tree houses made by little wizards are too rough to attract fairies to settle in. Levin walked up to Hagrid and showed him his wooden castle. Great! Levin! You are the fastest to complete the task. Hagrid clapped his hands, thought about it and said, I want to award Ravenclaw 10 points. Professor, can I change the reward? In class, Levin addressed Hagrid as Professor, which delighted him. This is an honorific title for a genius from Ravenclaw. Among his friends, even Harry still calls him by his original name. Levin was the first person to call him Professor. What do you want? Hagrid said enthusiastically, judging from his appearance, even if Levin wanted a fire dragon, he would catch one. Professor, I want to get up close and personal with Buckbeak. Levin thought for a while and said. It was a choice he made after careful consideration, although he did not support Hagrid teaching such dangerous creatures in the classroom. But now that something has happened, we must make amends. Levin hopes to set an example by himself and let other young wizards know that hippogriffs are actually very friendly, and Malfoy is solely to blame. Well. Hagrid was a little embarrassed. Don't worry, Professor. I can protect myself, not even the Chimeru and the Basilisk can do anything to me. Levin assured. Okay. But you have to be careful. Levin's request was indeed difficult for Hagrid to refuse. So he went to the paddock under the leadership of Hagrid. Many little wizards who were secretly paying attention to the paddock also gave up looking for the fairy and followed them. How beautiful, isn't it? Hagrid praised in front of the hippogriff. Levin could tell that his tone was different from when he praised the fairy before. Hagrid obviously likes this hippogriff even more and thinks it is beautiful from the bottom of his heart. After all, in terms of Hagrid's aesthetics, the more powerful it is, the more beautiful it is. The animal has the body, hind legs and tail of a horse, but its front legs, wings and head are like those of an eagle. Its cold sharp beak is the color of steel, and its big bright eyes are orange. The talons on its front legs are half a foot long and look formidable. There was a thick leather collar around his neck, tied by a long chain, which was tied to the fence. Although it looks majestic, it is the only one staying here alone in the huge paddock, which looks very worrying. Hagrid threw a fresh big fish in front of the fence. Buckbeak in the fence opened his mouth, caught it accurately, and ate happily. Originally there were many of them here, but you are right. In order to prevent Malfoy's revenge, I sent them all back to the Forbidden Forest. Only Buckbeak refused to leave. Hagrid thought no one was paying attention and secretly wiped his eyes with his big palm. It's really beautiful. Levin nodded. The little wizards who were watching also agreed with this view. Once they overcame the fear of seeing the half-horse, half-bird monster for the first time, they would begin to admire the hippogriff's shiny fur. Professor, can I take a closer look at it? Levin asked. With so many people watching, he thought it was time to show off. But, Levin. Because something had just happened to Malfoy, Hagrid was still a little worried. But before he could speak, Levin had already taken a step forward. At the same time, he secretly released the druid's breath. Buckbeak was immediately attracted. He raised his head, looked at Levin curiously, and then walked towards him gracefully. Buckbeak, this is my friend. Hagrid thought the other person was angry and wanted to step forward to stop Levin's recklessness. The students standing outside the paddock seemed to all 227 hold their breath. Unexpectedly, the hippogriff suddenly bent its scaly front knees and took the initiative to make an unmistakable bow to Levin. It seems that during the first meeting between the two parties, Levin was the one who was flattered. Buckbeak was very excited about Levin's reaction. He took this as recognition from the other party. It really likes you. Hagrid wiped his tears with emotion as he took off Buckbeak's chain and leather collar. It seems that Malfoy was injured because he was too self-righteous. I remember the newspaper mentioned in the summer vacation that Levin also participated in a dragon-slaying operation. All the students cheered. Levin succeeded. I really want to give it a try. The new month has arrived, and I would like to ask for a wave of custom orders, flowers, monthly votes, comments, and rewards. If you have votes, please give them to me as the author. This is really important to me. I knew he could tame this monster. As Levin successfully conquered the hippogriff, the young wizard's views on Buckbeak and yesterday's accident instantly changed 180 degrees. Oh, good boy, good boy. In reciprocity, Levin bowed slightly to Buckbeak. Before Hagrid could untie it, the eagle happily came to Levin and rubbed his big head against Levin's chest. Even Gryffindor Harry Potter can do it, of course Levin can't fail. Levin also stroked its head comfortingly. Oh, my god, he seems to like you very much. Hagrid was a little unbelievable. He had never seen Buckbeak be so proactive. After all, before Levin, he had never seen any child of nature like a druid. 6/4, 36/68 He is the man who conquered the Chimera. Chapter 186. After comforting Buckbeak for a while, Levin quickly rode on his back, which made the onlookers very envious of the little wizards. Buckbeak stood up, Levin skillfully grabbed its feathers, and then clamped his legs together. These are all skills he learned from Larry. Buckbeak immediately understood the meaning of Levin's movement. A pair of long wings spread out on both sides of Levin, vibrating and flying high into the sky. Although the hippogriff is not as smooth to ride as a broomstick, it is quite exciting. Buckbeak flew around Hogwarts Castle under Levin's command. They glided across the lake, over the hills, straight into the sky, and then glided longly above the clouds. One person and one eagle flew around the castle 2 or 3 times before returning to the paddock. Buckbeak landed slowly and leaned down to make it easier for Levin to get off his back. After flying around like this, Levin felt that there was an invisible tacit understanding between himself and Buckbeak. He patted its sharp beak affectionately, and Buckbeak, who flew freely in a circle, also put his head on Levin's shoulder. Feeling very happy. Sure enough, flying on a broomstick, flying after transforming yourself, and flying on a hippogriff, each has its own fun. No wonder Hagrid likes these big guys so much. Now it is completely understandable to Levin. Of course, if you really want to talk about it, among the several magical creatures Levin has ridden, including unicorns, centaurs, and eagles, Larry is the most comfortable and considerate. Speaking of which, it seems that there is another giant dragon among the magical creatures he can ride. How about changing Onyxia back to her original shape another day and flying around with her? Ministry of Magic, Department for the Regulation and Control of Magical Creatures, Fire Dragon Research and Restriction Bureau, Ms. Presto, who was chatting with her colleagues, suddenly sneezed. Ms. Presto, are you catching a cold? Let me make you a cup of hot coffee. At the same time, he immediately found the right opportunity to show his courtesy. No, I don't have a cold. The Black Dragon Princess shook her head. Maybe someone is talking about me. When Levin returned to the paddock with Buckbeak, he was greeted like an emperor by the little wizards. His feat of flying on Buckbeak was envied and admired by everyone. Even if Buckbeak was willing, not everyone had the courage to experience flying. Then, with Levin's coordination and help, most of the little wizards touched Buckbeak and fell in love with this big guy. After this get out of class, Hagrid was criticized for his mistakes in the previous class, but now he has been completely reversed. This is Levin's ability as the Cole of Hogwarts. Apart from the magical creatures class, what the young wizards at Ravenclaw are most looking forward to is the defense against the dark arts class. My doubts about the new teacher have long been overcome. The little wizards of Gryffindor and Hufflepuff have already experienced Professor Lupin's defense against the dark arts class. After they finished the class, they bragged about their experience against the Boggart and thought that Professor Lupin's lectures were of good quality. This was the case with Levin as a precedent, especially when Neville put on the clothes of the Boggart who was now in the form of Snape. His grandmother's clothes. This scene gave the whole lesson a comic color, making the little wizards of Ravenclaw both curious and expectant. Only Snape himself didn't think it was funny. From that day on, whenever he heard someone mention Professor Lupin's name, his eyes would flash with menace. When Levin entered the defense against the dark arts classroom, Professor Lupin had not yet arrived. It wasn't until the little wizards from Ravenclaw arrived one after another, sat down, took out their textbooks, quills, and parchment, and talked to each other that Professor Lupin was late. At this time, his face changed from the previous miserable look, and he always wore a smile from the heart. Although he was still as ragged, his complexion was much healthier than when he was on the train. It seemed that he had eaten a few good meals. Full meal. Good morning, he said, please put your textbooks back in your bags. Today is a practical class. You only need your magic wand. Look at his robes. To be honest, all the elves in our family are better dressed than him. Malfoy and the people in the Slytherin house whispered bad things about Professor Lupin. However, what surprised the eaglets was that Professor Lupin was unexpectedly gentle. He only glanced at Malfoy lightly without saying much, Okay, Professor Lupin said when he saw everyone was ready, come with me. The students looked puzzled and a little interested, and stood up one after another and followed Professor Lupin out of the classroom. He led them through the empty corridors and around a corner, where they saw Peeves, the most mischievous ghost, coming towards them. Just when everyone thought Peeves was going to cause trouble again, unexpectedly, he turned around and walked away, which can be called an escape. The Ravenclaws looked at the ragged Professor Lupin with admiration. They all heard about Professor Lupin's treatment of Peeves. The other party only used a launching curse to accurately block Peeves' nostrils. It was also a rare scene where Peeves was pranked by others. Professor Lupin was a little surprised by Peeves' reaction, and then continued to lead the little wizards through the second corridor and stopped outside the door of the staff lounge. Go in. Professor Lupin said, opening the door and taking a step back. The staff lounge is a long room with wooden panels on the walls and filled with old mismatched chairs. There was no teacher in the room, and the students filed into the room. Thank you very much to the professors. They are very supportive of the defense against the dark arts class and specially vacated this lounge for me. Professor Lupin closed the door. Okay. Professor Lupin said, motioning for the students to go to the other side of the room. There was only an old wardrobe where teachers kept replacement robes. Professor Lupin walked over and stood next to the closet. The closet suddenly shook and banged against the wall. Don't worry, Professor Lupin said calmly when he saw several classmates jumping back in shock, there is a boggart inside. Most students seem to think that this is what they need to worry about. With the vigorous publicity of Gryffindor and Hufflepuff little wizards, of course everyone knows that there is a boggart inside, but listening to the thrilling descriptions of the little lions and badgers, the little eagle and the little snakes will inevitably be nervous. No one wants to tell others about their weaknesses and privacy. Oh, Professor Trelawney said that I might encounter something bad this week. Padma Patil gave Professor Lupin a horrified look. Malfoy stared at the rattling cupboard door handle with trepidation. Boggarts like dark enclosed spaces, Professor Lupin said. Closets, the space under the bed, the cupboard under the sink. Once I met one living in a grandfather clock. Now, the first question we have to ask ourselves is, what is a boggart? Professor Lupin looked around the room at the little wizard. The Ravenclaws all looked at Levin. This made him a little dumbfounded. Most of his classmates should know the answer, but they were already used to asking themselves to answer the first question. This has almost become a Ravenclaw tradition, and they regard it as a form of respect. Professor Lupin followed their gazes and was surprised, but felt that it was reasonable. He did not expect that the outstanding student he met on the train would have such a high status in the college. Levin, it seems only you can answer this question. The boggart is a special kind of magical creature, not the same kind as most creatures. The latest research shows that it is related to dementors, and poltergeists, that is, everyone present knew that this was the change brought about by Levin. This means, Professor Lupin continued, we have a big advantage over the boggart. Have you discovered this advantage? But to a certain extent, the boggart's transformation still has a certain real effect. Professor Lupin nodded in admiration, as expected of the candidate, Mr. Green is very knowledgeable and even knows a lot of cutting-edge research on boggarts. Everyone should learn from him, Ravenclaw is a lot. At least he is neither partial nor stingy when it comes to extra points. The boggart's transformation is not essentially a transformation, but an illusion. Its transformation is essentially illusory and fake. In short, there is a kind of beauty of pretending to be true and turning true into false. But smiles appeared on their faces, and they began to like the most impoverished professor in Hogwarts a little bit. In fact, in Levin's understanding, the magic of boggart goes beyond that. Although the dementors transformed by the boggart cannot really absorb happiness, they can still arouse people's fear to the greatest extent. Levin didn't raise his hand this time, but the rest of the eaglets became active. Yet, Peeves, the closest thing we have ever encountered, is the product of emotional power. Professor Lupin looked a little surprised. It seems that Ravenclaw has changed a lot in the years since I graduated. You have begun to learn to take the initiative, instead of habitually observing from a distance, just like when I was in school, that's fine. For example, the moon transformed by a boggart can really transform into a werewolf. After Levin finished speaking, he paused and added, boggarts will see through people's hearts and become what they fear most, and their purpose of scaring people is to feed on human fear. This is photogenic. Soul monsters are very similar, and their food is happiness. That's why boggarts are considered dark magic creatures. The young wizards of Ravenclaw have long been accustomed to the various profound and extended content Levin provides when answering questions. So, the boggart in this dark cabinet doesn't have a specific shape yet, and it doesn't know what the people outside the cabinet door are afraid of. No one knows what the boggart looks like when it's alone, but as long as I put it, if you let it out, it will immediately become what each of us fears the most. Professor Lupin reminded the little wizards, and even the Slytherins listened carefully, and no one wanted to embarrass themselves in front of their classmates later. For example, most of the things conjured by boggarts will have a minimum level of entity. Chapter 187. Next, Lupin chose Morag McDougal. I think it's because there are so many of us, it has difficulty choosing and doesn't know what shape it should take. Morag expressed his thoughts. Very true. Professor Lupin said, and then added 2 points for him. When dealing with a boggart, it's best to go in a group. This confuses it, does it turn into a headless skeleton, or does it turn into a flesh-eating slug? I saw a boggart once. He made this mistake, he wanted to scare 2 people at the same time, and ended up turning himself into half a slug. Not scary at all. Then, he picked up his wand. The spell to repel the boggart is very simple, but it requires strong willpower. You know, what really makes the boggart completely destroyed is laughter. What you need is to force it to change. It will become an image that you think is funny. Let's practice the spell without taking the wand first. Please say with me. Funny. Funny, the whole class said together. Very good, said Professor Lupin, very good. But this is the easy part. You know, this spell alone is not enough. Who wants to try it for the 10th time? Everyone, look at me and I look at you. No one wants to be the first to expose their weaknesses. Levin sighed when he saw this, and wanted to be the first to go up and give everyone a demonstration. But Professor Lupin shook his head and said, No, Mr. Green, I have no doubt that you can defeat the boggart. But I think you are more suitable as the person who finally ends it. Except Levin, no one is willing to be the first to try. Professor Lupin frowned slightly. Okay, I want you all to take a moment now to think about what you are most afraid of, and then imagine how 287 you could make it ridiculous. The classroom suddenly became quiet. In fact, Levin himself is thinking back, what is my greatest fear in this world? If I let go of hidden thoughts, what image will the boggart have? Thinking about it this way, he didn't seem to know himself that well, and he was very curious about what he was afraid of. Maybe a boggart can help him. After a while, Professor Lupin asked, Is everyone ready? Who comes first? The first person to stand up was Levin's roommate, Steve Cornford. This boy is a carefree person in Ravenclaw, and naturally he does not lack courage. Very good, Steve. Let's all step back, Professor Lupin said, and leave a space for you, okay? At that time, I will call the next classmate to come forward. Okay, everyone, step back and make room for Steve. Levin realized something and glanced at Lupin in surprise. If Professor Lupin could call him by his name, it was because of a chance encounter on the train. So, now that he can call Steve's name, he is definitely prepared. As a professor, Lupin memorized the names and appearances of the young wizards in advance. From this point of view, he was indeed a good teacher, and was even their best defense against the dark arts professors so far. And this evaluation may not be outdated even if it continues for 3 years. The classmates all retreated to the wall, leaving Steve standing alone by the closet. His face was a little pale, but he did not retreat. I'm counting to 3, Steve, Professor Lupin said, pointing his wand at the closet. Point 2, point 3. Go. A burst of sparks shot from the end of Professor Lupin's wand, which hit the handle of the closet door. The closet door suddenly opened, and a green monster crawling on all fours crawled out of the closet, stared at Steve fiercely, and made bursts of hissing sounds. Like a dynamite fuse being lit. It dragged stiff movements and slowly crawled towards Steve step by step. The hissing sound became more and more rapid, as if it was about to explode at any time, and Steve seemed to be stunned by fright. The bar didn't move. Steve, chant the curse. Kevin, another roommate, reminded loudly. After being distracted for a while, Steve took a step forward, pointed at the skeleton with a pale face, and yelled, Funny. The next moment, the crawler suddenly sprouted a pair of cats, with cat tails coming out from behind its buttocks, crawling around on the ground, as if it was frightened by its own appearance. Good job. Next, Padma. Professor Lupin shouted. Padma Patil seemed to be inspired by Steve's courage, gritted her teeth and rushed forward from him. Snap. The mummy disappeared and a giant cobra appeared. The cobra coiled on the ground, raised its head high, exposed its fangs, stared at Padma, and mouthed a message. Before it bites an Indian girl, Padma screamed and cast the spell, Funny. The cobra lunged at her, stumbling and tying itself in knots before Padma fell to the ground screaming. Seeing the cobra trying to untie itself and getting more and more tangled, the students burst into laughter, and Professor Lupin shouted, Draco Malfoy. Seeing the two classmates in front of him going so smoothly, Malfoy seemed to rush forward impatiently. As a result, a hippogriff appeared in front of him, and it raised its sharp claws towards Malfoy. Afda funny. Malfoy stumbled as if he was frightened. The hippogriff was immediately beheaded by the executioner, but it seemed that Malfoy's spell was not powerful enough, and the boggart changed again. This time, it was Levin Green himself who appeared in front of them. He stared at Malfoy fiercely, as if to say, Do you want to be turned into a toad by me again? Everyone was immediately surprised, and their eyes wandered between the two Levins. At this moment, another hand patted Malfoy's shoulder. He turned around. Levin was standing behind him. Am I really that scary? The two Levins said in unison. Malfoy's face turned red, and he screamed and ran out of the door. Malfoy's farce caused a burst of laughter, and now everyone knew that the person Malfoy feared the most was Levin Green. Ravenclaw and Slytherin's little wizards continued to try, so boggart transformed into spiders, mummies, giants, and other forms. The scariest one is Terry Boot, whose boggart is a Dementor. The strangest thing is Daphne Greengrass. Her biggest fear is that her sister turns into a fox. Levin glanced at Daphne meaningfully. Other young wizards didn't know, but he knew that this was because the Greengrass family inherited the blood curse, and her sister Astoria Greengrass unfortunately became infected. Those infected by the blood curse can transform into blood curse orcs, transforming into an animal. But unlike normal animagus, the transformation of the blood-cursed orc is irreversible. As the curse deepens, the infected person will eventually turn into an animal forever. That is indeed a very terrible fate. Finally, Professor Lupin shouted, Levin, come up and kill it. All the little wizards looked at Levin with great anticipation. They all want to know what Levin, who seems so good, omniscient, and omnipotent, is afraid of. Levin nodded and stepped forward. With a pop sound, the boggart turned into a bloody eyeball, and then turned into a bomb, a spider, and a corpse. Next, the boggart twisted faster and faster, spinning on the ground in the middle of the classroom. But Levin remained unmoved, as if he was not affected by the boggart. Everyone looked at Professor Lupin, hoping that he could explain the situation at hand. Lupin was also quite impressed. Actually, I didn't tell you another way to deal with boggarts, which is occlumency. This is a complex and profound magic that can seal the brain to resist magical invasion and influence. So the boggart cannot read Mr. Green's inner fear. Obviously, your Levin has superb occlumency skills. Of course, what Levin uses is not occlumency, but whether it is thought concealment or thought barrier, it can show similar effects. All the little wizards looked at Levin with admiration. He once again demonstrated his omnipotence. Levin, you are indeed the most talented student I have ever seen. Lupin also looked at Levin and advised, but why not try to see what you are afraid of? The best way to eliminate fear is to face your fear. Listening to his serious words, Levin almost thought his next sentence was persistence is victory, come on, Oli. But what Professor Lupin said made sense. He was also very curious about the object of his fear. Besides, everyone has exposed their own weaknesses, wouldn't it be bad if he was the only one hiding it? Chapter 188. After thinking again and again, Levin lifted the thought barrier he had maintained. The next moment, the ever-changing boggart before his eyes was instantly finalized. The little wizards discovered that a huge three-dimensional picture frame appeared in front of them. All the little wizards of Muggle origin recognized it as a TV. The TV showed a rough picture with snowflakes, and inside the picture was a well. A pale ghost hand suddenly appeared on the edge of the dry well. Soon, a female ghost with disheveled white clothes and black hair climbed out of the well, and crawled all the way towards the camera, getting closer and closer. Then, she actually penetrated the screen and crawled out directly from the TV. Her black hair fell directly to the ground. Levin met her eyes, and the eyes hidden under the black hair stared straight at Levin with endless malice and resentment. Cluck, cluck, cluck. There was a sound like bubbles bursting in the female ghost's throat, which looked very strange. Many students screamed outright. It is true that this female ghost is so evil that those who are targeted by her will feel sweat on their foreheads and chills on their spines. Levin also remembered this nightmare. In other words, it was a nightmare from his childhood in his previous life. The guy in front of him was none other than the famous female ghost, the protagonist in The Ring, Sadeko. The real Midnight Ring was released in 1998. No one of the little wizards present recognized her image, but they were all frightened by him. This female ghost has the evil power that most female ghosts have, but what really establishes her reputation are two unprecedented abilities. One is the curse of Yin that can be spread through videotapes. Anyone who has seen the videotape will be attracted by her. Keep an eye on. The second is the scene in front of me. Sadeko can crawl out of the screen of electronic products. This new type of female ghost, which combines traditional female ghosts with modern electronic products, has swept the world, and of course the world's horror film market, as soon as it appeared. Levin has no doubt that if Sadeko was real, it would undoubtedly sweep the world in a physical sense. Levin is not afraid of horror movies, but Sadeko is undoubtedly an exception because it was the only horror movie he watched as a child. In the world of Harry Potter, Levin has never been frightened by the ghosts of Hogwarts, even the Bloody Barrow, whom students are most afraid of. The other ghosts seemed quite cute in Levin's eyes, especially Helena, the ghost from his own college. Not only was she beautiful, but she also personally offered her mother Rowena Ravenclaw's hands, which was a great tribute to the whole family. But now when he suddenly looks back at Sadeko, Levin still has lingering fears. But soon, he thought of a way to deal with the other party. I'm just worried about teaching bad children. Funny. Levin shouted. Sadeko suddenly found that her VA began to swell, as if she had been blown up. The originally skinny girl turned into a sexy mature beauty, but because the model was too large, her whole body was stuck in the mouth of the TV screen, and she was stuck in the TV screen for a long time. If he doesn't come out, he can only cry loudly. From a scary female ghost to a sexy and cute girl in an instant, the little wizards were stunned, especially the little wizards. Lupin was still quick and shoved the TV into the closet and closed the door. Great spells in imagination. Professor Lupin looked at Levin with complicated eyes, but it would be better if you could imagine some less adult scenes. However, the little wizards have spontaneously expressed their attitudes. The little witches all have red faces and dare not look at Levin. And the little wizards clapped, screamed, and cheered wildly, as if Levin was their big hero. Even the little snakes of Slytherin were no exception. Sure enough, people always unite when doing color. So, in this pleasant atmosphere, Professor Lupin ended the defense against the dark arts class hastily. The homework was a 7-inch paper about boggarts. Until the end of get out of class, the little wizards were still discussing Levin's method of dealing with boggarts with great interest, considering it as one of the most practical spellcasting techniques invented by Levin. I believe that from now on, the little wizards at Hogwarts will have a different way of thinking when facing boggarts. As for Levin, he did not continue to participate in this discussion. Instead, after class, he hurriedly found a corner to perform the mansion technique and returned to the tower hidden in the demi-plane. The reason why he ran so fast was because he gained extremely unexpected benefits in this section of black magic defense. Now he can't wait to find a place to study it. In the underground laboratory, Levin examined his harvest. You have witnessed the magical creature boggart, witnessed its ever-changing changes and ability to turn reality into reality, and realized that the essence of the illusion school is the constant conversion between reality and illusion. You have understood the illusion school specialization. Since you have comprehended the specializations of all schools, you have begun to integrate the knowledge of all schools. As your understanding of magic continues to deepen, you will inevitably touch the limits of your arcane power. You have comprehended the knowledge of each major school. The relationship of unity and opposition, you obtain the advanced profession Arcane Master, your Arcane Master level +2 a Yuanshi professional abilities, LV1, Arcane Magic Specialization LV2, Junior School Ability LV3, Prefer Super Magic X2 LV4, Attribute Points +2 LV5, Intermediate School Ability LV6, Proficient in Creation LV7, Prefer Super Magic X2 LV8, Attribute Points +2 LV9, Advanced School Ability LV10, True Arcana. When your total Arcane Caster career level reaches LV21, or your Arcane Master level reaches LV10, you will unlock the Arcane Master's legendary career level. Arcane Magic Specialization integrates the specializations of all schools. After upgrading, you will learn the basic spell factories of all schools. Elementary School Ability, due to your study of arcane magic, you understand the unique techniques of each school protection, you gain extra proficiency in dispel spells and counterspell spells, making it easier for you to dispel other people's spells. Universal System, you get a chance to summon a magic pet. This magic pet may come from any world, but it is definitely the most suitable magic companion for you. Now, he felt that he could completely suppress Snape, and could even fight the complete Voldemort for a few times without losing. In terms of advanced professions alone, this so-called Arcane Master is definitely much stronger than Jaina's valuable heaven. Looking back, since he became a wizard, he has never contracted a magic pet. Charm Control System, your charm spell success rate will not be reduced because of your additional hostile behavior, and the creatures that are charmed by you will not be more likely to break free of the charm because of your hostile behavior. Divination, spells cast by you that require continuous concentration will still work without concentration. He felt like his strength had almost doubled. Undead, the undead creatures you summon are more difficult to restrain and disperse. Illusion, the authenticity of your illusion magic is enhanced, making it more difficult to see through. Looking at the career tree of the Arcane Master, it is only level 2 that gives Levin a series of school abilities. Each ability is a specialty when taken separately. Conjuration, any creature you summon gains extra life. The picture shows Sadaka Wako. This can be regarded as officially entering the ranks of powerful people in the magic world. Change System, your alchemy ability is greatly improved. Levin had no idea that he would actually collect the last illusion school specialization in this ordinary defense against the dark arts class, let alone that he would be able to create such a heaven-defying advancement after collecting all the school specializations profession. Evocation, the spells you cast can automatically bypass friendly enemies. It is completely in line with his vision of both comprehensive development and comprehensive development. But the top priority is to try the general ability in elementary school. Ability. Chapter 189. A familiar is a contracted creature that every mage can own. For arcane spellcasters, there are few better investments of time and money in a familiar. A familiar is the mage's lifelong partner, guard, spy, and servant. It is also the most trusted confidant and best friend of every spellcaster. All magic pets can help their owners perform some useful tasks, such as holding small objects, peeking in corners, eavesdropping, and keeping vigil when the caster is sleeping. More importantly, magic pets will also create a magical link with their owners, thus growing with the owner. The most basic magic pets are ordinary creatures, such as cats, owls, toads, etc. In fact, the tradition of wizards keeping pets in the Harry Potter world stems from the instinct to pursue magic pets, and wizards and their pets also. There is indeed some special tacit understanding. It's a pity that the wizards in this world have not developed a way to truly connect with their familiars. In addition to ordinary animals, some powerful spellcasters will also choose some small magical creatures as familiars. Typical examples include goblins, little devils, 583 little devils, magic bats, and even tube foxes and fairy dragons. Spellcasters have racked their brains in order to obtain the strongest magic pet as possible, and some even developed a way to use young dragons as familiars. In fact, Levin has always been able to choose a familiar, which can not only help him in life and magic research, but also can be used as a pet. But like those senior spellcasters, he really doesn't like ordinary creatures as magic pets. Among the magical creatures in Harry Potter's life, there are not many useful familiars. If you think about it carefully, there are quite a few magical creatures in this world that are suitable for becoming familiars. Although elves, devils, and fairies are smart, they have no special abilities. Xianiao, Mao Zi, and Xiu Xiu are special enough, but they don't help him use magic at all. As for the velvet, this thing should be a pet for wizard children. Now that he finally had a way to find a magic pet from other world, Wei immediately became excited. Then let's see what is the most suitable demon pet for me. Levin started to use the magic pet summoning technique he had just learned. In fact, after careful study, he discovered that the magic pet summoned by the spell was not completely random. He can add some additional casting materials to adjust the direction of the summoning spell. For example, if he wants a fiend as a familiar, he can add some sulfur to the casting materials. If he wants a more holy familiar, feathers in the form of a feathered serpent would be a good choice. Levin's choice was to add a little onyxia's blood. He wanted to try to see if he could summon a young dragon to be a magic pet, but if it didn't work, a fairy dragon would do the trick. As the magic power gathered, a whirlpool-like portal opened in front of him. Levin can feel that what is connected to the other end of this portal is not a stable space, but boundless chaos and endless plains. This is his first time. No, strictly speaking, it is his second time to experience the power of time and space that connects the heavens and the world. This couldn't help but bring back memories of his time traveling. Soon, Levin felt that the spell was cast successfully and the portal disappeared. But there was nothing in front of the portal. Is this conveying loneliness? Wrong. According to Levin's connection with the portal when he cast the spell, he did feel that a certain being was sent from the other end of the portal. It could only be that due to some unknown interference, there was an error in the transmission, and his magic pet was sent to other coordinates. Why did something go wrong at this time? Levin feels a little guilty, but he was even more fortunate that he had chosen to learn new powers in the demi-plane tower just to be on the safe side. With this demi-plane, no matter how far the coordinates deviate, they will not go beyond the demi-plane. The space in the demi-plane is limited, so you are not afraid of the familiar level. So Levin immediately left the basement and started searching in the demi-plane. He first followed the river that circled the demi-plane, then searched everywhere in the forest, and asked Larry to help him search. Finally found all the way under the oak tree. Then I heard a young voice commenting on his demi-plane, "This is indeed a pretty good place. At least this tree is very nice, but other places are too boring. A stone house, an ordinary in the woods, it would be great if there was a fountain full of jam, or maybe a chocolate tree planted. Then when everyone passes by, they can break off a branch and eat it." Who's talking? Levin was surprised. After he gained psychic powers, few people could appear behind him before being discovered by him. "It's me." A small purple dragon with iridescent wings emerged from behind Levin. "It is obvious that she likes chocolate trees very much. Such a cute little dragon has been following you, you haven't noticed it, right?" After seeing this little guy, Levin immediately understood where the familiar he summoned had gone. "Wouldn't this be delivered to your door?" "Okay, cute little dragon, if you have been following me, why are you not talking until now?" The other party was obviously a child, so Levin also spoke to her in a childlike tone. "Maybe I'm a little shy? After all, we don't know each other, and I also want to look around and get used to it. Everything in Otherworld is weird, and everything is too serious. This half the plane is particularly weird." Xiaolong commented without any scruples. Levin is not surprised at all by this. The other party is not a human being, so he will naturally have a different perspective. "0, so you don't like me here?" Levin asked. "It's not that I don't like it. I can have a lot of fun here, but I prefer my home in Elysium." Xiaolong frowned funnily, "But since I came here at your request, this is my home. We will make this place more interesting together, right?" Looking at the little guy's expectant eyes, Levin nodded, and then said, "If we are going to be companions, the first thing we should do is exchange names. My name is Levin Green." "What's your name, Xiaolong?" Xiaolong tilted his head and replied obediently, "My name is Iwu, because I am still young. The longer our family lives, the longer the name will be. Otherwise, it would be really funny. Imagine that you just grew up from an egg. You were hatched not long ago, and you're still only a 5-year-old baby, but everyone calls you Rizaraburun or Ursalike or something like that." Xiaolong snorted. Levin guessed she was laughing. Unexpectedly, there is a setting that the older you are, the longer your name is. This is the first time Levin has heard of it. But the little guy turns out to be only 5 years old. For a long-lived creature like a dragon, this is indeed a very young age. "Then where are you from?" Levin continued. "Where did I come from? What does this sentence mean?" "I flew all the way here." Iwu seemed to have misunderstood Levin's meaning, and explained seriously, "Well, actually I didn't rely on myself when I crossed the longest river, but I flew the next way by myself." 7 After that, she flew to Levin excitedly, "You have always wanted to have a dragon of your own, right? Who doesn't want to have a dragon as a partner?" Levin estimates that the longest river she calls 5.9 is the chaotic gap between planes. Of course it is impossible for her to leap to such a place by herself, or Levin couldn't imagine any creature that could physically travel directly across the worlds. However, Levin's answer to Iwu's question is of course, if anyone says he doesn't want a dragon, there must be something wrong with his mind. He, Levin Green, has been a senior dragon cancer since his last life. "I knew it." Iwu immediately became happy after hearing this, "I have never doubted it. If you hate dragons, I won't want to be friends with you. But even if you hate dragons, I will make you change your mind." "Ah, you little dragon is indeed very confident." But she does have confidence. Levin already has a general understanding of her identity. Judging from her appearance in her hometown Elysium, this little guy is actually a carnival baby dragon. The picture shows Iwu. Chapter 190. Carnival dragon, also known as catastrophe dragon, different from traditional 5-color dragons, metal dragons, and other dragons that live in the main material plane. Carnival dragons are planar dragons, that is, dragons native to the outer plane. These dragons usually have characteristics similar to those of their homeland, and are born with an ability called plane assimilation. Being able to transform the nearby environment and transform this area into an extension of their home plane, placed in the moon world, this is a special inherent enchantment. The so-called outer plane is an auxiliary plane that is attached to the main plane but has unique characteristics. The world of gods, heaven, hell, purgatory, etc. in mythology all belong to the outer plane, if they really exist. The carnival dragon is a plane dragon that belongs to the bliss realm. The so-called Elysium corresponds to the origin of the famous name Elysia, which means eternal paradise. It is the embodiment of the beautiful side of nature. It is full of wild and idealized natural beauty. It is full of greenery. Wild and unconstrained by law. In the myth of Blue Star, there are usually gods like Artemis, Aphrodite, and the Muses in the Greek pantheon, as well as Ishtar in the Babylonian pantheon, as well as various fairies, a paradise where nymphs, tree demons, and other creatures would like to live. 05 The carnival dragon born here is full of this cheerful and free temperament. As a natural elf, it is not surprising that it was able to briefly escape Levin's detection in a demi-plane with a strong natural atmosphere. This giant dragon has insect-like wings, colorful colors ripple on its scales, and its whip-like tail seems to be dancing gently in the invisible breeze, looking elegant and beautiful. Adult carnival dragons are born with beautiful singing voices and superb acting skills. They are all happy artists. They have the ability to freely change their bodies, and they also have certain psychic abilities that can infect everyone around them with happy emotions. As giant dragons, they have two types of breath, sonic breath that acts on the body and has powerful power, and chaotic breath that acts on the mind and confuses people's thinking. At the same time, they themselves will also be immune to sonic attacks. In addition to their natural abilities, carnival dragons, as dragons, are also natural spellcasters, able to cast a series of arcane magic and natural spells. This is why the best familiar for Levin is a carnival whelp. First of all, she is a dragon. Secondly, as a dragon, it is a natural arcane caster. Then, as a plain dragon in paradise, it possesses the power of nature. Finally, as a dragon whose name is Carnival, it has the psychic ability to infect others. Dragon and arcane magic and power of nature and power of mind, doesn't it correspond to the dragon's blood in the ritual and Levin's three major part-time jobs? However, most of the above has nothing to do with Iwu. Today's little Iwu is only 5 years old, still a baby. How can you ask a baby to be as invincible as a real Zilong? But there is no doubt that she has great potential. Seeing Iwu, who was as big as a cat, lying in front of him, looking at him expectantly, Levin took the initiative and said, "Since you are my dragon, let us sign a contract." "Okay. I've been waiting for your words." The little carnival dragon waggled its tail and came up to Levin, trying to stick its head out towards him. Levin put his hand on the top of Xilong's head. With a flash of inspiration, Levin felt that there was some kind of connection between himself and the little guy in front of him. Their magic, their power, and their destiny are linked together. Then he saw that the little dragon in front of him suddenly became much larger, from the size of a cat to the length of a horse. This is, a Euro. Levin felt strange. He had never heard that carnival dragon had this ability. Little Iwa was very excited. "Look, I've gotten bigger. I'm more beautiful, right? And since I can carry you on my back, my dragon friends in paradise will definitely be jealous of me." So, his familiar only existed for 1 second and then turned into a mount? Regarding Levin's doubts, Xiao Iwu replied, "Dragons generally grow up with age, but I grow up as your strength becomes stronger. So don't be fooled by my appearance, don't forget I'm still a child. Even though I'm big, covered in scales, and can freely use plain magic, I'm still just a child." Iwu constantly emphasizes her identity as a child, as if she can get more favor from her master in this way. And Levin finally understood what was going on. Under the familiar contract, Levin shared magic power with Iwu, so her ability level was forcibly synchronized with Levin's, growing directly from a young dragon to an adult dragon. However, because Carnivalosaurus itself is a small dragon, it appears to be about the same size as a horse. But that's not her true power. If the contract expires, she will return to her original size. The little dragon happily ran around with her adult body, and even took the initiative to let Levin ride on her for more than a dozen times. But soon she got tired of it, transformed back into her baby dragon form, and flew onto Levin's shoulder. In response, she plausibly said, "Because I am a baby, so you should hold me." He is really a little troublemaker that makes people laugh and cry. However, as a familiar, the little guy did provide Levin with a lot of help. As long as you have the ability, you shouldn't wrong her in other places, right? To be honest, even in a magical world where there are all kinds of strange creatures, a talking pet is still a bit shocking. In this case, why did he wrong Xiaolong and leave her alone at home? There is also a life link between the familiar and the master, which allows the two to share vitality. This point doesn't make much sense to ordinary magic pets, but it doesn't mean anything to lovebirds. Even if the adult carnival dragon is smaller than her fellow dragons, in terms of vitality, she is much stronger than the human Levin. Therefore, the existence of life link directly increases Levin's vitality from a human to a human and a dragon level. If it weren't for Levin's surgeon strength, he wouldn't have dared to bring Xiaolong out so openly. This is exactly why Iwu is the most suitable demon pet for him. There are not many demon pets with these three powers at the same time. In addition, both parties to the magic pet contract have sensory enjoyment, power supply. With such a huge vitality, Levin doubted that he could even eat Voldemort's avatar alive. As long as necessary, Levin can enhance his arcane magic, natural power, and psychic powers with the help of Iwu. The familiar has the ability of spell transmission, and Levin can cast his own spells through the familiar. The new month has arrived, and I would like to ask for a wave of custom orders, flowers, monthly votes, comments, and rewards. If you have votes, please give them to me as the author. This is really important to me. It is human nature to love freedom. He traveled thousands of miles across the world to come to you and become your magic pet. He is so kind to you. When Levin showed up at the Ravenclaw lounge with Iwu, it quickly caused a sensation. But now, he can guarantee that no one can take Xiaolong away from him. Within a day, all the eaglets knew that Levin had a talking dragon. 400 Not only can Iwu share the master's magic and magic, but Levin, as the master, can also share Iwu's abilities. Update 5/4, Additional. Update 37/71. Chapter 191. After the little dragon Iwu appeared in the lounge, he was loved by the eaglets immediately. Whether wizard or witch, witches love her cute appearance and lively and playful personality. As for the wizards, oh, just the fact that she is a dragon is enough to win the hearts of all of them. Therefore, every time Levin showed up with Iwu, a large number of people would gather around him, wanting to take a look at Iwu with confidence. Their enthusiasm almost frightened Xiaolong. Iwu looked around timidly. It's so scary here. How about we take these delicious things and change to a less scary place? Looking at the blocked dormitory door and the expectant eyes in front of him, Levin understood that if he didn't do something, he might not be able to get out, so he looked at Xiaolong. They just want to touch you, love. Woo, they just think you are too cute. But Xiaolong was still a little hesitant, so Levin took out his trump card and took out a butter cookie from his pocket. I have a sweet and delicious cookie here. Only the most obedient children can eat it. Who wants this cookie? When Xiaolong heard this, he immediately jumped up and stretched out his paw towards Levin. Me. Me. Me, me, me. I want cookies. Levin, can you give me a cookie? Please 33. I can give you cookies, but you have to greet everyone properly. As he said that, he handed over the biscuits. Iwu bit the biscuit with his teeth and closed his eyes in excitement. Then she opened her eyes suddenly. Hello everyone, I am Levin's pet, Iwu. As you can see I'm just a little dragon, I'm still growing up. So everyone can only touch it once, otherwise I won't grow up, is that okay? The little guy's milky voice and sweet words almost made everyone cute. Who else would not agree? So the little Ravenclaw just ate biscuits obediently in Levin's arms, while the Ravenclaws took turns coming to Levin to feel the little guy's delicate and cold dragon scales. It was also from this day on, the little wizards know how to please Iwu. Soon, Iwu became the dominant player in Ravenclaw Lounge. As long as Levin is in the lounge, or when he goes to class, he can see Iwu flying around in the lounge. No one wants to take care of her, even if they are occasionally affected by her nonsense. Professor Flitwick also likes Iwu very much. After Xiaolong appeared, his frequency of patrolling the Ravenclaw Lounge increased significantly, and he would chat with Iwu for a short while each time. Soon, Levin no longer needed to prepare food for Ravenclaw, because every time the little guy would encounter a bunch of Ravenclaw girls feeding him, anyway, with the stomach of Ravenclaw, no matter how much sweets he eats, it would not be unhealthy. Therefore, Xiaolong would come back every day with a lot of snacks to share with Levin. A week later, Xiaolong was still healthy, but Levin himself was almost indirectly obese. The fact that Levin raised a little dragon is naturally not limited to Ravenclaw. Whether it is Gryffindor, Hufflepuff or Slytherin, they all express envy and hatred. Especially Draco Malfoy. Since the last defense against the dark arts class, the news that Malfoy was afraid of Levin had completely spread, causing him great loss of face. His attitude towards Levin is both fearful and disgusting. It is clear that he will forget the nightmare last year and he is about to break through the psychological shadow caused by Levin. As a result, in the defense against the dark arts class, Levin's kiss made a deeper impression on him and brought him back to the tragic experience. The fact that Levin owned a talking dragon pushed his jealousy to the top. Who is Malfoy? He really likes dragons. Even his name, Draco, means Draco. In the first semester, he even gave up reporting Harry just to see Hagrid's Nobel Prize. In order to have Norbert, he even wanted to reach a reconciliation with Harry. Therefore, Malfoy decided to report Ye Wen. Of course, he would not dare to provoke the other party face to face. Just in time, the news that Levin was afraid of female ghosts also disappeared. So Malfoy and his followers would often make scary moves like a female ghost when others mentioned Levin, in order to mock Levin. At first, Levin didn't care much about this matter. But as time went by, Malfoy's expression became really annoying. Levin is determined to teach him a lesson. Among the Elysium spells shared by Iwu, there is a spell called dream casting that allows the subject to have a dream designed by the spellcaster after falling into sleep. But with reasonable adjustments, dreams can turn into nightmares. So, every day when dining in the cafeteria, Levin would deliberately walk slowly past the Slytherin table. Just happened to hear Malfoy slander him. Seeing this scene, Zhang Chu found it difficult to understand. Levin, do you really like Malfoy and the others to ridicule you so much? Of course not, I'm not that generous. Levin couldn't help but snorted. Malfoy has been having a hard time lately. Luna said suddenly, staring at Malfoy on the Slytherin table. That's right, that's all my fault, Iwu. Xiaolong also popped up. Among the little wizards in Ravenclaw, Luna is the one who plays best with her. According to her, Luna is one of the most interesting people, only slightly less interesting than Levin. Her quirky fantasies are really attractive. What did you do? Zhang Chu raised his eyebrows and asked AI in a low voice. Nothing, just weaving a sweet dream about Sadeko. Levin smiled slightly. And I became invisible and gave the dream to that guy. Xiaolong said proudly. Sadeko? Who is that? Zhang Chu wrinkled his nose and said aggrievedly, the new Japanese girl you met. Levin repeatedly waved his hands to deny her suspicions. Hasn't Malfoy been saying that I am afraid of female ghosts? Sadeko is the name of that female ghost. She is a ghost with flowing black hair and dressed in white. There are very few people who know her. Not afraid of her words. Floating black hair, dressed in white. Zhang Chu looked at his hair, then at his white skirt, feeling even more aggrieved. Are you so afraid of me? No, I didn't mean that. You misunderstood. Sadako is really just a female ghost. Levin waved his hands repeatedly and hurriedly told the other party Sadako's story. After listening to the synopsis of the movie, Zhang Qiu nodded in agreement. You are right, Zhao Lihao. If I dream about this female ghost, I will also be very scared. It seems that Malfoy is going to be unlucky. When Levin passed the Slytherin table again the next day, Malfoy was no longer in the mood to say bad things. At this time, his condition was quite poor. His platinum blonde hair changed from its usual meticulousness and looked messy. His eyes were severely congested and filled with bloodshot eyes. The eye sockets were dark, and he immediately changed to rest. After finishing lunch without any appetite, he left the auditorium with Goyle and Crabbe. Seeing this, Levin whispered a few words to Zhang Qiu. The girl quickly rearranged her clothes and hair, and then quietly left the auditorium. At the corner of the corridor, a distracted Malfoy met a woman with black hair and white clothes. He suddenly screamed, pushed Goyle and Crabbe away, and ran away without a trace, leaving a long line of people on the ground. Long water stains. Behind him, Levin came out of nowhere and laughed together with Zhang Qiu, who was wearing Sadako's imitation makeup. Chapter 192. After getting a little love, Levin's campus life seems to be more enjoyable. The little guy always brings him all kinds of fun, but there's just one thing. Levin never brings Iwo to any class except magical creatures. He knew very well that Xiao Iwo was the kind of person who would respond to whatever the teacher said. Whenever he brings Iwo with him, he will be kicked out of the classroom, even if the professors regard him as an outstanding student. In addition to Hagrid's magical beasts class, Levin also chose 3 other electives this semester: alchemy, arithmetic and ancient runes. The most difficult one to learn was ancient runes. Except for Levin, none of his roommates chose this course. He could only come to class with Hermione. Since there were too few people taking this course, unexpectedly 4 young wizards from the academy took the course together. But even so, when they entered the classroom, they found that there were still very few people inside. By coincidence, Malfoy also chose this subject. When Levin saw him, he still had dark circles and bloodshot eyes. Soon, the professor of ancient runes, Bathsida Barbling, entered the classroom. She was a woman who looked to be in her 30s, wearing glasses, wearing a simple and clean blue robe, and a bookish look. Interest. When she saw Levin, her eyes lit up and she said happily, I'm honored that Mr. Levin Green can take my elective class. With your level, you can't actually learn anything in ordinary classes. Something. Facing Professor Babbling's compliment, Levin showed a gentle smile. No, even I need to study in class 680. Oh haha, it's really an honor for you to say that. I don't think I can teach you anything. Professor Babbling laughed happily when Levin said this. If there are any shortcomings, I hope you can enlighten me. Oh, by the way, a master like you doesn't need to complete the homework prepared for mediocre people. I will give you an O directly in the final exam. What Levin said to the professor made the little wizards in the class open their mouths in surprise. Especially Malfoy and several of his Slytherin companions began to pretend to vomit as if they had eaten something disgusting. This is really too disgusting. It's simply differential treatment. But soon, the little wizards saw even more discriminatory treatment. Throughout the class, Professor Babuling led the students to read, recite, and copy several ancient runes. While they were working hard, Levin was sitting at the table, reading an unknown book with great interest. Professor Babuling ignored his indifferent behavior. Everyone cast envious glances at Levin, even under the most eccentric Snape. Malfoy had never seen such a situation. This is no longer the relationship between professors and students. Professor Bathsida Barbling obviously regards Levin as an equal peer, or even a senior with a higher status. When the first class was almost over, Professor Babbling began to assign homework to the little wizards. That is the task of translating ancient runes. The young wizards have to translate the correct meaning from these ancient runes that are complicated, difficult to pronounce, and full of polysemy. She herself stepped forward and asked Levin about ancient runes. Professor Babbling, I really want to find out why Green doesn't have to complete these exercises. Malfoy couldn't stand this kind of differential treatment, so he stood up and spoke out everyone's thoughts sharply. The difference in treatment is so great. They are working so hard to translate here, and their heads are about to explode. But he was sitting comfortably next to him, reading books slowly, and the professor was waiting on him personally. He even had the time to set up a table for tea. Professor Babuling was also very annoyed when questioned by students. As a professor, I naturally have my own rules. In my class, the only rule is ability. Whoever can reach the specified level will not have to attend lectures. No need to do homework. As she spoke, she tore off a piece of paper, scrawled something in runes on the paper, and slapped it in front of Malfoy. As long as any of you can translate this passage correctly, I will give him the same treatment as Mr. Green. When Malfoy saw this, he immediately looked at it carefully. Many young wizards also came forward, wanting to try their luck. But this complicated ancient rune made them dizzy. Even if they recognized a character or two, they couldn't understand what was written on it. Mr. Malfoy, please tell me the meaning of the above paragraph, can you? If you can enjoy the same treatment. Professor Babbling pursued the victory, forcing Malfoy to retreat again and again, and then looked around. Anyone can do it, I keep my word. Malfoy read the note over and over several times, and his face turned red from holding back the last one. With his level, he may not be able to complete this task in a whole semester. So, why didn't we see Green completing this task? Malfoy thought for a long time and finally caught a loophole. Because this is just the simplest use of runes. Professor Babbling said while taking out a book, as long as you learn this a simple introduction to ancient runes, you can also complete the translation. But if you want to really put ancient runes into use, the content of this book is only the simplest foundation, and you need to learn more knowledge. But as far as I know, Mr. Levin Green can actually use ancient runes as early as first grade. Really? I don't believe it. Malfoy thought this was too exaggerated. This was ancient runes. No matter how talented Levin was, there was no way he could learn this in the first grade. You have no evidence at all. Of course I have the evidence, that is, he can already modify or even create spells in the first grade. Professor Babbling took out her wand. I remember there is a spell called Dancing Lights. She waved her wand, and a ball of light emitted from the tip of the wand, flying around the classroom like a firefly. I have been famous for Mr. Green's self-created spell for a long time. I am grateful to him for teaching me this spell just now. It is indeed very simple and effective. In fact, the magic spells we know are essentially a combination of ancient runes, but they have been continuously modified and simplified during the development process, giving up variability while increasing ease of use, and finally became now it's easy to use the finished magic spell. This is like writing software. Ancient runes are libraries similar to C++ and Java. Although they are very complicated, they have many interfaces and are easy to combine and modify. But a spell composed purely of ancient runes is a program written on the basis of a large number of libraries in C++ and Java. It can be used, but the size of a single program is too large, because it comes with convenient modifications, but many of them are not useful in actual applications. Function on. And if you want to turn a spell composed of runes into a spell that is convenient for practical use, you need to go through a lot of deletion processes, removing all redundant parts for modification, leaving only the necessary ingredients. Everyone has just come into contact with ancient runes, so don't be too ambitious. I dare say that this is the most complex and difficult subject among all elective courses, but it is also the most useful after learning it, and it is the subject with the highest upper limit. Malfoy remembered another spell called Activating Rope, which reminded him of the embarrassing memory. Professor Babuling's words made everyone agree and nod in agreement. Actually, Mr. Green's level is completely sufficient to hold the position of Professor of Ancient Runes. If he agrees, I would be willing to study under him. Together with 6 other senior Slytherins, he was tied to the ground by Hermione, a little witch, with activated rope. According to her, Levin is indeed a master of ancient runes. You should focus all your attention now on learning how to translate runes, rather than questioning other people. Finally, the professor concluded, it's true that I feel the same way. For the first time, the other little wizards understood how big the level gap between them and Levin really was. One of the two requires Intel's most advanced CPU to run, and the other needs to run on the crappiest microcontroller. Finally, it is used on the crappiest platforms such as pinhole cameras and remote controls. The requirements for program simplification and optimization are different. He found Levin Green to be his nemesis. Every time he thought he found a flaw in the opponent, he always ended up shooting himself in the foot. This is basically equivalent to converting a computer software into an embedded one. Next to Levin, Hermione looked at him with even more admiration. If a wizard just learns how to use spells, there is no need to come into contact with ancient runes, but if he wants to create his own spells, then ancient runes are essential. For example, the dancing lights technique just now, and the anti-evil magic circle used by Levin to repel the Dementors on the train. In the past few years, they have indeed often seen Levin and Levin's friends using some magic spells that they have never heard of or seen before. After listening to the professor's words, Malfoy suddenly felt extremely embarrassed. Chapter 193. Malfoy was slapped in the face one after another, and his own condition was getting worse and worse because of the nightmare. Someone saw Malfoy coming to Professor Snape to get the tranquilizer. It seemed that Miss Sadeko in the nightmare did a good job. In contrast, Hagrid, who was tricked by him before, is now in a better state. After Levin's class, his reputation underwent a huge reversal. At least that's the case in the other 3 houses besides Slytherin. Therefore, he continued his efforts and prepared more actively for each lesson on the protection of magical creatures, eager to gain further recognition and love from the little wizards. When it comes to course selection, Hagrid finally learned to strictly adhere to Levin's criteria. He posted a table with the danger levels of magical creatures in his hut. He had never cared about this in the past. After all, most magical creatures were not as dangerous as him, a half-blood giant himself, and then only selected from the first 3 rows. Contents of the next lesson. So after the fairies, the little wizards also learned about the moon-crazy beast, the ball-escape bird, the catnip, and the snifshoe. These magical creatures are either cute or interesting, and without exception, they are not aggressive, so they are unanimously welcomed by the teachers. Of course, Levin wouldn't tell anyone how hard he tried to convince Hagrid to drop the teachings on flobbers, caterpillars and horclap. Even I would dislikes these 2 creatures. If he really did that, care of magical creatures would definitely change its reputation and become the most boring course at Hogwarts. As the course progressed, Hagrid began to become more and more confident, and his status in the minds of the little wizards also increased day by day. He was no longer the silly hybrid giant in the past, but a wild man who loved nature, was interesting and reliable. Levin even began to hear that some little witches thought Hagrid was pretty good and worth a try. He didn't know what kind of strong taste it was. Besides, Slytherin, the only one who didn't like him that much, didn't cause too much trouble in Hagrid's class. People in Slytherin said that Draco Malfoy had already told his father Lucius Malfoy about his injury. But at least so far, the Ministry of Magic has not received his complaint. At least that's what Onyxia, who works at the Department for the Regulation and Control of Magical Creatures, says. By the way, Onyxia also knew about Iwu's existence. She wrote 6 or 7 letters to Levin, hoping that Levin could bring Iwu back to meet her during the holidays. She couldn't wait to see him. Kindred from other worlds. But Levin doesn't think Iwu will like her. In fact, Iwu, who comes from Elysium, doesn't like anyone who is too evil. It just so happens that Onyxia has done a lot of bad things in the past. Time soon entered the cold October. Levin also started to get busy. The Quidditch season is approaching, so apart from daily study life, Kaiwen should not conduct Quidditch training. Last year, due to the Chamber of Secrets and the Basilisk, the Academy cancelled several Quidditch games, and the Quidditch Cup was naturally abandoned, although everyone knew that with last year's results, Ravenclaw could win any normal game. First, but compared to being the real number 1, the uncrowned king always feels less proud. Roger Davis vowed to make up for this regret this semester. Levin also agreed with his idea, because this semester was also Cyrilla's last semester at Hogwarts, and Levin naturally couldn't let her leave any regrets before graduation. So the Ravenclaw team started training with the confidence of victory, training 3 times a week. As winter continues to come, the weather is getting colder and colder, and there is more and more rain. But mud, wind, and rain couldn't dampen the Ravenclaw team's hopes of finally winning the Quidditch Cup. Another evening, after the training, Levin and Ciri returned to the Ravenclaw common room together, Iwu trotting behind them. Although she was confused at first as to why Levin was chasing the ball on a broomstick, instead of riding her, because she thought she was much more interesting than the broomstick, she soon became Levin's little fan and would be interested in every training session. Vigorous from beginning to end. The training on the rainy day was very awkward. The rain, mud, and sweat mixed together, making the whole person look wet and dirty, but Levin didn't mind it. It was very refreshing to stretch out his body through Quidditch occasionally. After he finished washing himself and Iwu, he came out refreshed and found that the common room was buzzing and lively. What happened? He caught Zhangqiu, who was in high spirits and gossiping, and the girl happily explained to him. Soon we can go to Hogsmeade to spend the weekend. She said with eyes wide and a smile on her face, I look forward to this day every semester. Are you going to some interesting place? Iwu became excited when he heard this. Okay. Take me with you, take me with you. Of course I will take Iwu with me. Levin patted Xilong's head, and then looked at Zhangqiu. What day is the body protection time? The girl pointed to the text on the bulletin board and said, End of October. Halloween. This bulletin board is newly installed. Then she looked at Levin expectantly. Should we go shopping together then? Just the 2 of us, maybe bring Iwu, and we can go to Honeydukes and buy Genjian calendars. Hearing this proposal, Levin couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. Well, you know, I'm happy to agree to it, but it seems that there are a lot of friends who need my company, so. 11-0, please give me flowers. Oh, that's it. Zhangqiu lowered his head, feeling a little disappointed. This makes Levin feel a little guilty. He is not the kind of person who takes being licked for granted. So he thought for a while and then said, however, if I find time, it's not impossible to go shopping alone for a while. Then it's a deal. The girl immediately became excited again and clapped her hands with him to show her agreement. Well, it's a deal. In fact, it's not just Levin who is discussing this matter. The most interesting discussion was among the 3rd grade wizards. This was their first time participating in this kind of activity, and no one wanted to miss this outing. The little wizards of Ravenclaw have sent permission forms home to collect their parents' signatures. For those like Levin and Cyrilla who do not have parents who can sign, the professor has to be responsible. Professor Flitwick has already prepared them for them. However, the night before Hogsmeade Day, something unexpected happened. After dinner, everyone returned to their respective lounges as usual. Levin was preparing to wash up and rest when he suddenly heard Professor Flitwick's voice echoing in the common room, so he had to put on his pajamas and hurried to the common room to gather. Professor Flitwick didn't tell everyone the reason and just brought everyone to the auditorium. When they arrived, the Gryffindor and Hufflepuff students were already there. Their house lounge is relatively close, the latest is Slytherin. But until everyone arrived, they still didn't understand what was going on. But someone noticed on the way that the Dementors over Hogwarts started flying around again. Until Professor Dumbledore entered the auditorium and said to the students, Hogwarts has been invaded. The faculty and I will conduct a thorough search of the castle. For your own safety, I think you may have to stay here overnight. I asked the prefects to stand guard at the entrance of the auditorium, and the heads of the boys and girls student unions to stay in the auditorium and be responsible for management. If anything happens, report it to me immediately. Professor Dumbledore paused for a moment and was about to leave the auditorium, then said, Oh, by the way, you will need with a random wave of his wand. The long tables flew to the edge of the auditorium and stood against the wall. With another wave, the ground was covered with hundreds of purple sleeping bags. Sleep well, said Professor Dumbledore, closing the door behind him as he went out. The auditorium immediately filled with excited buzzing voices, and Gryffindor students were busy telling other students what had just happened. Levin probably understood what was going on. Apparently, Sirius Black invaded Hogwarts in advance. Chapter 194. At this time, all the candles in the auditorium have been extinguished, and the enchanted ceiling looks like the sky outside, dotted with many stars. Under the ceiling, only the silver ghosts gave off a little light. In this critical moment, they changed from their usual unreliable appearance and performed their duties very well. Relying on their ability to pass through walls, they went to any hidden corner to look for traces of Blake. They floated around. They were talking seriously with professors and prefects, obviously sharing information. Sleeping in groups is indeed a novel thing for Levin. Looking at the outcrop-like ceiling and listening to the whispers still ringing in the auditorium, Levin felt as if he was camping outdoors. Do you think Black is still in the castle? To Levin's left, Hermione whispered. Ravenclaw's and Gryffindor's bunks were next to each other, and Hermione deliberately chose the bunk closest to Levin. Probably not. I don't think anyone would be stupid enough to stay at a crime scene after committing a crime, especially when Dumbledore is here. 557 on the other side of Levin, Zhangqiu replied casually. She obviously felt that the professors were a little weird. Then how did he sneak in quietly? After a while, Cyrilla's voice sounded from the direction above her head. There are obviously so many Dementors at the entrance of the school. It must be disapparition. Harry said, but immediately earned Hermione's disdain. If you have read Hogwarts, a history, you will know that there is no way to apparate in Hogwarts. Harry's face turned red and he had forgotten all about it. Maybe taking a secret passage? George and Fred said that there are many secret passages in Hogwarts. Ronald opened his mouth and sold his twin brother. Maybe he flew in? Maybe he also had a little dragon that flew him into the castle. Although he didn't know anything, the lovebird also expressed his opinion. Oh no, Iwu, Black can't have a little dragon. In fact, I am the only one who has a little dragon that can take me flying into the castle. Iwu is unique. Wen explained while touching Iwu's head. Really? Really? Is Iwu really unique? Being commented like this, Iwu was very excited. Can the unique Iwu eat one more cookie? But it's bedtime. Okay, I can only have one. Levin couldn't help but love Wu's coquettishness and fed him another small piece of cookie. Then he saw the girls around him looking at him. What, are you guys looking at? Okay, I've convinced you. Why are you all becoming as childish as Iwu? Are you not afraid of getting fat if you eat this at night? Levin muttered and reluctantly distributed a few cookies to the girls around him. Harry, Ronald, and several nearby junior teachers all got their hands on it. This bed chat is already developing into a tea party. Everyone was talking about possible ways to sneak into Hogwarts. Some said he came in with makeup, and some said he drank polyjuice potion. The answers vary. Everyone, it's bedtime. Percy's warning voice sounded not far away. I want every one of you to get into your sleeping bags and stop talking. Look, the majesty of the head boy. The president of the male student union is head_boy, literally translated as boy brain, George said sarcastically. Compared to head_boy, I think humongous_big head is more in line with his image. Fred added jealously. Their statement elicited a burst of sneers. With a thought in his mind, Levin patted Iwu. The little dragon immediately understood and entered the invisible state excitedly. He jumped 3 times and came to Percy Weasley in the distance. Using the dragon as a medium, Levin quietly cast a spell. When Percy patrolled again, the twins were surprised to find that the head boy badge on Percy's chest had really changed into humongous_big head. Their laughter suddenly rang out in the auditorium. What's going on? Who's laughing? Percy still wanted to maintain order. But after their reminders, more and more little wizards saw the Percy Big Head badge, so the laughter changed from a duet to a symphony, and the order could no longer be maintained. Under Levin's quilt, Iwu was so excited about the successful joke that he swung his tail and whispered, "This is Iwu's prank. Iwu is the most powerful little dragon." At this moment, the door of the auditorium opened, and Professor Flitwick walked in with 2 pale boys, his 2 roommates, Steve Cornford and Kevin Entwistle. What happened to them? He asked with some concern. Seeing that the visitor was Levin, Flitwick explained directly, they had been in the library before and didn't hear the notice. They came back a step late, but they knew they were attacked by Dementors who were searching in the corridor. Not all the routes into the auditorium on the first floor are indoors, but also include outdoor routes. The 2 people had a numb and desperate look on their faces, obviously having had a lot of happiness sucked away from them. Levin handed over 2 cookies. Ever since he raised Iwu, he always had a lot of these in his pocket. Flitwick arranged for the 2 of them to find a bunk to lie down on, and then frantically looked for Madame Pomfrey everywhere. Seeing the 2 of them still depressed after eating the cookies, Levin had a thought in his mind. Yes, if you want to make people happy immediately, who can be better than Carnival Dragon? Iwu. He turned around and said to Xiaolong, who was looking at the 2 of them curiously, I need you to play some role and use your power to make them happy, okay? So, is it time for Iwu to sing? Iwu likes to sing the most. Xiaolong was happy to help. Then, Xiaolong's clear and melodious humming sound resounded throughout the auditorium, la 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 la, la la, la.la la la, la la, la.la, la, la, la la la, la, la 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 la, la la, la, la 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 la, la la la, la la. La. BGM refers to the tune of Lenaro's Dream. In fact, Lan-Nara's world is very close to the setting of Elysium. Along with the singing, the power of the Carnival Dragon Carnival was emitted, and Steve and Kevin suddenly felt an uncontrollable joy suddenly arise in their already numb hearts, and the happy days of the past seemed to be right in front of them. The influence caused by the Dementors was suppressed, and the expressions of the 2 people became visibly vivid. Sure enough, the power of the Carnival Dragon is completely the Dementors' nemesis. When Madame Pomfrey hurriedly followed Professor Flitwick to find this place, Steve and Kevin could already joke loudly with their companions. When they knew that all this was done by Iwu, they were all very happy. Madame Pomfrey touched the little dragon's head movedly and praised her for her ability and like a hero. Level 4, Charm Monsters, Free Movement, Rhetoric, Any Door. Spells, equivalent to LV7 Spellcaster Charm Caster Surname 0.7 First Name, Iwo of course, Iwo's magical tunes don't come without a price. Level 0, Mage's Hand, Water Creation, Light, Detect Magic, Increase Resistance, Switch Level 1, Detect Evil, Divine Favor, Entropic Light Shield, Grease, Hidden Mist, Wild Power Level 3, Dispel Magic, Remove Curse, Wind Wall, Stone Shaping in the entire auditorium. It was not just Steve and Kevin who had listened to her singing. The other little wizards were also so excited that they had been high for most of the night before they could fall asleep. Yes. Yes. Iwo is the most capable little dragon, just like the real heroes. Because we are the real heroes. After that, he danced a little happily. Abilities of familiars, Spell Transfer, Life Link, Sense Sharing, Spell Sharing, Ability Sharing Strength, 27, 13, Agility, 14, 10, Constitution, 21, 13, Intelligence, 20, 14, Perception, 19, 14, Charisma, 22, 15, Race, Carnival Dragon. Adult Dragon, the prototype is a young dragon, level, LV16 Carnival Dragon, LV4 Carnival Dragon, but the impact of Blake's attack was only beginning. Anyway, this special night passed just like that. Abilities, Advanced Magic Resistance, Shape-Shifting, Lightning Reflexes, Chaos Breath, Sonic Breath, Performer, Feast of Joy, Protective Sound, Dragon Power, Plane Assimilation Level 2, Treatment of Moderate Injuries, Assistance, Sonic Blast, Stabilization of Injuries, Constant, Attached is Iwo's panel. Chapter 195. Black's invasion really put Hogwarts into trouble, and the trouble caused by the Dementors made the situation even worse. If it weren't for the presence of love, perhaps the Ministry of Magic and Dumbledore would have received a few more howling letters. Fortunately, in the next few days, the professors no longer let students sleep in the auditorium. But instead, the prefects tightened their control over everyone and imposed stricter prohibitions. All young wizards are not allowed to enter or leave the castle at will without permission. They will be escorted by prefects every time they go to class. As for Gryffindors, the fat lady's vandalized portrait has been taken down from the wall and replaced by a portrait of Sir Cadogan and his fat grey pony. The Gryffindors thought this was terrible, because Sir Cadogan spent half his time asking people to duel him. The rest of the time was spent figuring out ridiculously complicated passwords, which he would change at least twice a day. Neville was the biggest victim of this incident. He couldn't remember the passwords that were changed so frequently. Fortunately, the trip to Hogsmeade the next day was not cancelled, but simply postponed, so many people breathed a sigh of relief. The two most popular topics among the little wizards are Iwo's singing and how Sirius entered the castle. Therefore, for at least a week, 0511 did not dare to take Xiaolong out of the Ravenclaw common room. Because every time she appeared in the corridor, the little wizard would invite her to sing, and every time Iwo couldn't help teasing her and wanted to sing, so Quoin had to cover her mouth. Are you kidding me? Can I sing the Carnival Dragon song casually? As soon as her voice opens, the entire corridor will burst into laughter. As for Sirius Black, the theories about how he broke into the castle are getting increasingly bizarre, with Hufflepuff's Hannah Abbott even speculating that Black would have transformed into a flowering bush. But no one guessed that Sirius was an illegal animagus. Professor Remus John Lupin knew, but he had not told anyone else. The darkest speculation comes from Professor Snape, who believes that Black was able to invade because there was an insider in Hogwarts, and the insider was undoubtedly Remus John Lupin. Dumbledore naturally would not doubt the staff without reason, which made Snape very uncomfortable. He carried this sentiment into defense against the dark arts class the next day. When they discovered that the person who appeared in the defense against the dark arts classroom was their potions professor Severus Snape, all the Ravenclaws were shocked, but the Slytherins were happy. Your Professor Lupin was too ill to teach today, so he invited me to teach as a substitute. When he said this, Snape grinned and looked very proud. Professor Lupin didn't leave any records about what your class learned, so can anyone tell me what you learned? After saying that, he scanned the whole place with dangerous eyes. Under this situation, all the little wizards in Ravenclaw turned their attention to Levin. The boy had no choice but to raise his hand. He was usually admired by others, but now he had to stand up. Professor Snape narrowed his eyes. Very well, Levin, please tell me what you have in your empty heads. Mr. Snape, we have already learned Boggart, Red Hat, Card, and Grindylow. We are now preparing to challenge magical creatures with higher ratings from the Ministry of Magic. Levin replied quietly. Based on this calculation, Professor Lupin was the only defense against the dark arts professor who actually taught anything since he entered Hogwarts. But obviously Snape didn't think so. It seems that you are easy to satisfy. Lupin has almost no high demands on you. I think first-year students should be able to deal with Red Hats and Grindy. Today we are going to discuss. The little wizards watched curiously as he flipped through the textbook until he reached the last chapter. Werewolf, Snape finally said. Now, everyone, turn the books to page 394. He glanced at the shocked class again. All of you. Now. Although everyone did not understand why Professor Snape did this, many people guessed that this must be due to the personal grudge between Professor Snape and Professor Lupin. In front of the menacing Professor Snape, the little wizards could only remain obedient. Can any of you tell me how to tell the difference between a werewolf and a real wolf? No one made any sound in the class after that. Everyone sat and took notes about werewolves from the textbook, while Snape walked back and forth between the desks, checking the work they had completed during Professor Lupin's teaching. The bell finally rang, but Professor Snape didn't let them leave. Each of you write a paper and give it to me. The content is about how to identify and kill werewolves. This topic should be written on 2 pieces of parchment and handed in on Monday morning. Someone should be in charge of this class. After the boring defense against the dark arts class, it's the even more boring Halloween Eve. On this day in the past, Hogwarts had long been decorated with lights and was filled with a joyful atmosphere, but Black's invasion and the Dementors' troubles made everyone unhappy. This semester's Halloween dinner has become the most boring one. There are no Christmas decorations, no performances, just Dumbledore's dry safety speech. Only the delicious food on the table can soothe the hearts of the little wizards. When he returned to the lounge, Levin found that the entire lounge was immersed in an uneasy atmosphere. Blake's invasion and the rampant Dementors are already very disturbing. Please, help us. Yes, totally agree. Levin, teach us. He looked at the boy next to him. Levin, we all depend on you. 967 What do you want to say? Levin asked doubtfully. But Professor Lupin was not the only one who expelled the Dementors on the train. Zhang Chu couldn't help but point out, Levin was also involved. In addition, there were our senior sisters Cyrilla and Pinello. You can ask them for advice. At this juncture, Lupin, the defense against the dark arts professor who represents self-protection and fighting against danger, actually took a leave of absence. Thinking of the Dementors hanging high above the academy, the young wizards began to plead. Steve is right, Kevin added beside him, everyone, think about it. In the last few months of last semester, we all listened to Levin's defense against the dark arts class, even though he was our classmate. But his lectures are no worse than those of professors. Steve said loudly, and his words attracted many young wizards in the common room. They all looked over and felt the same way as Steve's words. We want to take your class like we did last semester. The new month has arrived, and I would like to ask for a wave of custom orders, flowers, monthly votes, comments, and rewards. If you have votes, please give them to me as the author. This is really important to me. Yes. Steve's eyes lit up as he thought of his experience in the second half of last year. Update 5/4, additional update 38/74. I dare say that Professor Snape will never teach us this. Steve agreed with him, he just wants to find trouble with Professor Lupin. You see, the Dementors have now entered the campus, ready to take advantage of the opportunity to hunt down Blake and attack innocent people like us. Kevin and I are the victims. Professor Lupin expelled the Dementors on the train. I obviously want to ask him for advice on the Patronus charm. Kevin said worriedly, why would he ask for leave under such circumstances? And Steve looked at Levin eagerly, his eyes full of pleading. I think that when everyone is threatened by Dementors and the defense against the dark arts professor cannot provide help, it is necessary for us to find another way to learn the Patronus charm. And you are the best teacher, Levin, can you teach us? For the little wizards, this is undoubtedly adding insult to injury. Chapter 196. Levin nodded after thinking about the little wizard's request. The defense against the dark arts class last semester was taught, but this section or two is still missing. In addition, and more importantly, Black and Dementors are the current source of anxiety for the young wizards at Hogwarts. Whoever can solve this anxiety for them will gain a lot of goodwill and favor. Study groups established under such circumstances are likely to develop into small groups. For example, the small circle that Voldemort established at school when he was still Riddle later developed into Death Eaters. And the Dumbledore army that Harry will establish in the future also has the tendency to become a small order of the Phoenix. Of course, his current conditions are much better than those of Dumbledore's army in the future. At least you don't need to hide your head and tail and worry about the venue. Since you all want to learn the Patronus charm, then I will go to Professor Flitwick to apply for an empty classroom to practice the spell. Levin said. His words triggered enthusiastic cheers from the eaglets, and the roof of the lounge was about to be blown off. Just do it. Early the next morning, Levin found Professor Flitwick. After hearing Levin's intention, Professor Flitwick was of course supportive. As the Dean of Ravenclaw, he is happy to see students so motivated. I will go and apply for your study group with Dumbledore. Until then, the charms classroom can be open to you at your leisure. Although Professor Flitwick is not the principal, he still has the right to arrange his own classroom. Thank you on behalf of my classmates, Professor. Levin said and invited, if the professor is free, you are welcome to come to our study group for guidance at any time. Of course, I will go. Professor Flitwick agreed kindly, and he couldn't be more satisfied with this proto-copyright GA copyright. During lunchtime that day, when Levin took his seat, he found that the little Ravenclaw wizards around him were looking at him with burning eyes. What did Professor Flitwick say, Levin? Steve asked him patiently. When he asked this question, the entire Ravenclaw table was extremely quiet. Not only Ravenclaw's third grade, but also many senior and junior wizards were looking forward to Levin's answer. They heard that Levin was going to start a group to learn the Patronus charm, and they all wanted to join it. When Levin nodded, the cheers of the eagles resounded throughout the auditorium, shocking other colleges to poke their heads in to find out what happened to Ravenclaw. After lunch, Levin found Pinello and Cyrilla, both are in 7th grade, and usually, they stay together. Zilly, and Senior Pinello, my study group needs your help. Levin got straight to the point. Of course, you can do whatever you want. Ciri never said anything to him. On the other hand, Pinello looked at him with some reproach. Why do you call me Senior Pinello? This is too alienating. I can't help you if you are like this. Facing the senior sister's teasing, Levin could only smile bitterly. Okay, Pinello, you are the president of our female student union and have rich organizational experience. I need your help in managing the training staff. It is an honor for me to be able to participate in establishing the most popular patroness charm study group. Pinello did not continue to decline. And you, Siri? Levin looked at the Witcher. I hope you can serve as a demonstration assistant in class. Shirley nodded and took the job. Great. Seeing that they all agreed, Levin clapped his hands happily. In that case, some important work can be arranged. Currently our group still lacks a teaching aid for practicing spells. Maybe after everyone learns the patroness charm, I can personally capture a Dementor to contact. But that is an advanced teaching aid. As an introductory teaching tool, I need a boggart. I remember that Professor Lupin's one has not been eliminated yet. I need someone to go to him and borrow the boggart. So, we have a job to do right after we take office. Pinello was dumbfounded by Levin. Are you just waiting here for your feelings? However, Cyrilla had no unnecessary complaints and just looked at her female companion. You go or I go. I'd better go. Seeing that his best friend was so stubborn, Pinello had no choice but to agree. I am the female student president and I have to deal with professors more. It should be easier for him to agree if I go. She felt like she was being eaten to death by Levin and Cyrilla. Levin's style of throwing, no, hands, good, palming, leading, cabinets, guiding, is beginning to show that afternoon. Pinello found Professor Lupin. Although she didn't understand why the professor looked so weak, she borrowed the boggart easily. Professor Lupin had always been easy to talk to. Now that the classrooms and teaching aids have been arranged, Levin made an announcement about tonight's training camp before dinner. At this time, another role of Pinello comes into play. As the female student president, she has the obligation to supervise the little wizard to and from get out of class and return to the lounge in time during this emergency period. But on the other hand, as long as she is here to watch, Levin's study group can stay in class until very late, and no one will bother them anymore. While having dinner, the little wizards of Ravenclaw talked happily about the evening training, and everyone was looking forward to it. At the end of dinner time, almost half of the Ravenclaws gathered in the Charms classroom, making the place seem a bit crowded. The Charms classroom has long been arranged as a training ground. At the back of the classroom, there is an old magic cabinet with a simple shape. The sharp-eyed Xiao Ying recognized that it was the one in the staff lounge. The boggart inside felt the popularity outside, and suddenly became excited, BG the cabinet with a bang. The first one to appear was not Levin, but Pinello Cravat. The girl showed off the momentum of the female student council president, walked up to the central stage with her long legs, and used loud voice on her throat, everyone present, look here. She took the lead and attracted the attention of everyone present. The originally noisy classroom suddenly became quiet, and only her voice could be heard. I'm Pinello Cravat, your head girl, and it's great to see so many Ravenclaws here. First of all, I want to reiterate the original intention of establishing this study group. We all know that because of Sirius's escape from prison, the Ministry of Magic sent Dementors to garrison the school's enclosure for our protection. However, the actual situation is exactly the opposite. As early as the first day of school, many young wizards were harmed by Dementors. On Halloween, 2 of our companions were attacked by Dementors. Obviously, the Ministry of Magic not completely in control of their evil minions. On the podium, Pinello bitterly satirized the incompetence of the Ministry of Magic, while the Ravenclaws turned their attention to Steve and Kevin beside the podium. They were the best living advertisements for the study group, and everyone sympathized with their experiences. In this case, none of us can guarantee when they will rush into the campus and cause us harm again. Therefore, after obtaining Professor Flitwick's permission, we decided to conduct a training camp every Saturday night to learn Patron Saint Spell Factory. Pinello's speech was clear and coherent, and he addressed the concerns of the little wizards. The audience burst into applause. Levin even noticed that even Luna, who usually didn't care about anything, started clapping her hands, obviously interested. When the applause began to thin out, Pinello continued, fortunately, we have a talented student in Ravenclaw, Levin Green. Although he is only a third-year student, he has more experience in fighting magical creatures than anyone else. He is the first wizard in history to kill a chimera and survive. He killed the basilisk with 2 other companions last semester, and during the summer vacation, he participated in 2 more the dragon-slaying operation organized by the Ministry of Magic, Wang Niuhao. And he is also very successful in dealing with Dementors. On the Hogwarts train, he led us to successfully resist dozens of hungry Dementors. Therefore, you, as his classmate, we invited him to be our teacher. The applause from the audience was even more intense, and the opportunity was more than 10 times that of last time. Finally, it is naturally time to stack armor. The study group adheres to the principle of voluntariness. The young wizards participating now are all of their own free will. In the future, the review process may be increased to recruit new people. But everyone can withdraw freely. During the teaching period of the study group, there may be some dangerous situations. At the same time, for the needs of teaching, the study group will assign certain tasks according to the needs and carry out certain rewards and punishments. The leader of the group, Mr. Levin Green, has the authority to deal with those who disobey the arrangements. Members have the right to expel, and all group members also retain the right to withdraw freely. If you can abide by the above principles, please raise your hands. As long as you all agree, this study group will be officially established. As soon as she finished speaking, all the hands in the audience were raised. No one hesitated, even the 7th grade wizard who was about to graduate. Levin's long-standing prestige and series of achievements have created everyone's trust in him. Chapter 197. After Pinello finished speaking ill of him, it was finally the right person's turn to take the stage. Thank you for your favor in choosing me to be the teacher of the study group. This is a great honor for me. Levin was very humble when he started to speak and won a round of applause. Since everyone trusts me so much, I will naturally live up to everyone's expectations. In the study group, I will try my best to teach everyone the spells to deal with dementors. Of course, there may be other knowledge if everyone needs it. In short, I hope everyone can gain something from the study group, and dementors will no longer be a threat to us. There was another burst of applause and cheers. What Levin said was exactly what they wanted to do. When the applause stopped, Levin continued, of course, a single tree cannot make a forest. If you want to maintain a study group, I cannot do it by myself. Because I want to introduce to you my assistant. First of all, it is our female student president, Miss Pinello Cravat. I am honored that she can take time out of her busy study and work to help me establish this study group. In the process of establishing the group, she really provided a lot of help. In the following study, she will be responsible for the organizational tasks of the group, such as signing in, publishing notices, organizing activities, etc. If anyone wants to take leave, join, or leave the study group, remember to come to her. Following Levin's words, Pinello stood to the left of Levin. She looked serious and had a leadership style that was not angry or authoritative. Seeing that everyone in 337 understood Pinello's work, Cohen continued to introduce it. Secondly, I want to introduce my most important teaching assistant, Miss Cyril Liliane. Everyone knows that Cyrilla and I are the best partners on the Quidditch field, but what everyone doesn't know is that she is also my best comrade. Every time I fight magical creatures, she is always by my side, I can always trust her with my back. Therefore, in terms of magic level, you can trust her as much as you trust me. In future courses, she will not only serve as my demonstration assistant, but will also be responsible for helping me guide everyone's specific spellcasting techniques. Cyrilla walked onto the stage from the crowd, stood to the right of Levin, and gave a burst of cheers. As Ravenclaw's Quidditch star and recognized as the most beautiful girl, she is still very popular. The third assistant may be a little special, but I dare say that most of you will like her. She is my most important magic pet, Iwu. As soon as Levin finished speaking, Xiao Long couldn't wait to rush to Levin's shoulders from behind, spreading her beautiful wings in a showy manner. In future studies, Iwu will be responsible for medical work. After all, the original purpose of our study group was to fight against dementors. If we want to quickly learn the patroness charm, we have to use some special teaching aids, and during this process, someone will inevitably be affected by the dementors. At that time, we will need Iwu's power, her healing ability. I believe everyone saw it the night before yesterday. The audience roared with applause again. In Ravenclaw, almost everyone doesn't like Ravenclaw. This became more and more a fact after Iwu successfully rescued Steve and Kevin. In this way, Levin introduced the top-level structure of the entire study group. Among them, the most important position belongs to Pinello. It can be said that Levin basically delegated the most important work of the team to her. It seems that the power of life and death in the entire study group is in her hands. Of course there is a saying, in Levin's view, the work of organizing personnel is the easiest to offend people. In this case, if Levin does this kind of work himself, it will reduce his prestige. It is better to leave the affairs to others and become a shining leader himself. As for the possibility that Pinello might use this power to oust Levin, at least to influence Levin's decision-making, it is impossible to happen. Essentially, this study group is founded on two foundations. One is the little wizard's fear of dementors, the second is Levin himself, or rather, his prestige. So wherever Levin is, that's where the study group is. If Levin is absent, the study group will be disbanded on the spot. In this case, Levin does not need to sacrifice more important prestige for the so-called actual control. Therefore, it is a better choice to outsource important work and become a boss, leader, with no hands, good, hands, leader, and cabinet, guide. Finally, Levin said, because our study time is limited and we only have one teaching aid, our training opportunities are quite precious and I hope every student will cherish them. Because of this, before the venue and equipment are further improved, we will collect the quota and will not accept registrations from other colleges for the time being. As soon as these words came out, Levin could see that the expressions of the little wizards below changed. His method of deliberately shaping the other and rejecting the other gives the little wizards the illusion of being chosen. They suddenly felt a strong sense of pride. You're right, Levin, we won't let them join. We have Levin. Let them be envious. At this moment, this study group seemed to be no longer a study meeting, but a party club. Thank you, Miss Lovegood, for making it very clear. Levin smiled and thanked her for her explanation. Levin continued, but it doesn't matter. As a private reward, I will give you a homemade cookie after class. I will likes them. So, now that everyone understands the dangers of dementors and how they can cause harm to humans, we can talk about the spell to expel dementors. Unexpectedly, the second person to raise her hand was the crazy girl Luna. You know, she would hardly do this in the professor's classes. Before we start practicing, in order to take care of the younger students, I think we need to know something about dementors and the patroness charm. Levin looked down at the students under the podium and asked like a real professor. The first person to raise her hand was Zhang Qiu. Naturally, she had to work hard to support Levin's course. After Levin, Luna said a long paragraph like a hymn, in addition to sucking away positive emotions, there is one and the most poisonous force, the kiss of the Dementor. They can suck out the soul of this person. The victim is left with nothing more than an empty shell, no longer conscious, unable to recover, and worse than death. Levin also seems to be no longer the teacher of the group, but the leader of the club. The girl immediately stood up and said, Dementors are dark creatures, considered the ugliest things in the world. When a Dementor approaches, all good feelings and all happy memories will be sucked away from you. So that can lead to feelings of depression and hopelessness. So, does anyone have anything to add? Levin nodded at her. His ridicule caused a burst of laughter, and Zhang Qiu sat down happily. Except for Pinello, Levin could feel that the other person was obviously surprised just now, and the eyes he looked at him became more and more complicated. After finally waiting for the cheers to pass, Levin arranged for several assistants to get off the stage and officially started the lecture. So, can anyone introduce the Dementors to you? But among the little wizards present, almost no one could detect Levin's intention. Well said, Zhang Qiu, Levin nodded, but I'm sorry, just like last semester, I still don't have the authority to give you extra points. Chapter 198. Next, Levin began to explain the principles of the patroness charm. As Zhang Qiu and Luna said just now, Dementors represent negative emotions and power, and bring despair to people by sucking happiness. And if we want to fight against this negative power, we need positive emotions. This is the origin of the power of patron saint curse. In fact, the essence of the patroness is the power of positive and happy emotions. It is the external manifestation of the things that Dementors rely on for survival, hope, happiness, and the desire to survive, but it cannot feel it like a real person. It's desperate, so the Dementors can't do anything to it. Therefore, before casting the patroness charm, we must focus on recalling the happiest memory we can think of. The stronger the pleasure brought by the memory, the stronger the effect of the spell, and use the wand to draw a circle to accumulate energy for the spell. Power. After that, you need to recite the spell calling the guardian. The guardian will emerge from the tip of the wand and run towards the target. Then, Levin pulled out his wand. There is no better way to talk than to give it a try. Next, I will personally demonstrate the patroness charm to everyone. Then, calling God to guard. The next moment, silver light poured out from the tip of the wand and gathered together to form a complete image, much more complete than the first time he used this spell on the train. But its image is not the feathered serpent of that time, but a dragon, an adult carnival dragon, exactly like I was as an adult. Look, have you seen it? Look, that dragon is just like me. Seeing the carnival dragon formed by white light, Iwo jumped up with excitement. Levin could feel that with just one thought, he could transform the patron saint back into the form of a feathered serpent, but its first image was still that of the carnival dragon. This seemed to have been decided after the contract between one person and one dragon was made. Levin did not change, but controlled the carnival dragon guardian saint to circle around the classroom, triggering bursts of exclamations. As the patron saint approaches, everyone feels a burst of warmth and joy. Finally, the patron saint ran to Iwu, gave Xiaolong a gentle kiss on his forehead, and then disappeared. This is the full effect of the patroness charm. Levin explained, but I don't expect everyone to do like me in the first class. This is not realistic, because the patroness charm is a very advanced magic, far beyond the level of ordinary wizards. In fact, many skilled wizards have not been able to master the patroness charm, so don't be discouraged even if you fail to learn this spell for the time being. After listening to Levin's warning, the little wizards below had bright eyes and seemed to be more interested. The smart Ravenclaws were not to be outdone in this regard, and they looked at the boy on the moss attentively. Regarding their self-confidence, or in other words, overestimation of their abilities, Levin was not impressed and continued to add, then, as I said before, everyone can think about the happiest things before practicing. Since there is no we need to face the Dementors, and we have enough time to do this. The little wizards in the study group are all racking their brains to search for their happiest moments in their memories. This kind of thing is much simpler for Levin, who has psychic powers, a psychic of SLV7, he is already very good. Good at controlling one's own mind and tapping into one's own memory. Seeing that most people were eager to give it a try, Levin nodded. Have you all focused your thoughts on the happy memories? Next, read with me. Call the gods to protect you. Calling God _no, guard sorry call the gods for protection, call the gods for protection. Suddenly, some young wizards discovered that something, which looked like a wisp of silver gas, was spurting out from the tip of their wand. Well done, there's something happening. Levin walked off the podium and praised the little wizard who caused this phenomenon. This is what the initial success of the patroness charm looks like. Levin's affirmation made the little wizards look very excited. Very good, Levin said with a smile, so, let's try it with a Dementor, are you ready? Although it's not a real thing, the shapeless patroness charm is enough. Now let's start free practice. If you don't understand, you can ask the teaching assistant. Students who feel they are ready can line up and come to me for practical exercises. Pay attention to order. Cyrilla immediately stood up to perform her duties, and Pinello also stood up to help her. Levin himself walked to the closet. There were already many little wizards lining up in front of him. Most of them were upperclassmen, but Levin was surprised to find Luna among them. This also caused the other little wizards to whisper. Isn't this the crazy girl? She is so overestimating her abilities. She is only in her second year. Not all wizards are named Levin Green. Even after being educated by Levin before, there are still some little wizards who don't like Luna, but they don't dare to do it openly, and it can no longer reach the level of school bullying. It was difficult for an upright official to take care of household affairs. Levin didn't say anything, he just gave Luna an encouraging smile, and then Meow-kun pointed at the cupboard door. The cabinet door opened silently, the old TV appeared again, and Sadeko climbed out of it horribly. The appearance of Sadeko startled the wizards who saw her for the first time, until Levin activated thought concealment to isolate his own thoughts and just missed the appearance of the Dementor. The next moment, Boggart was immediately misled, with the sound, it turned into a Dementor. Its hooded face turned toward Levin, and a glowing, scabbed, rotting hand grasped its cloak. The lights around the classroom flickered and went out, until Levin's daylight technique brought light again. The Dementor came out of the box, preparing to make Levin approach. But Levin misled it again, under the influence of command technique, the Dementor's will was distorted, targeting the little wizard in front of him. Although Boggart's transformation is an illusion, it also has the power to turn the imaginary into reality, and it is quite a bit like the magic of the illusion system shadow evocation. Such Dementors can certainly arouse a little fear in the little wizard. Several senior wizards failed almost immediately, facing the Dementors, they couldn't recall any happy memories at all, and naturally they couldn't even summon a silver-white mist. There is always a difference between actual combat and practice. They could only obediently receive a piece of chocolate from the table next to them, and then team up to receive spiritual healing from Egg-wan. As another 7th-year wizard was so frightened that he couldn't hold his wand firmly, he withdrew from the queue in dejection. It's finally Luna's turn next. Facing the terrifying Dementors, Luna's always dazed expression became serious, and the hand holding the wand trembled slightly. As the Dementor floated towards her under Levin's control, Luna recited the spell, "Call the gods to protect you." Failed to use for the first time, 0, please give me flowers. She shouted one after another, calling God for protection. Calling God. The Dementors were approaching her quickly, and were about to arrive in front of her. But Luna stood there stupidly, lowering her head slightly, her disheveled light blonde hair blocking her face, making her expression unclear. Levin was about to declare her defeat and control the Dementors to leave temporarily, the top of Luna's wand changed, and dry silvery white gas emerged, even brighter than other successful little wizards before. The gas gradually dissipated not long after it left the wand. But it was this force that made the Dementor take a few steps back. But he was also irritated by this and rushed towards Luna's face. Then, like a puppet, it turned around obediently and put itself back in the closet, waiting for the next challenger. Levin quickly stepped forward and supported Luna with his hands to prevent her from losing strength and falling. After the contact, he discovered that Luna's robe was soaked with cold sweat. As the young wizard who had the closest contact with the Dementors, she could no longer practice. So, Levin helped the girl and brought her to the corner where I was. 0 as I was Diddy played, the girl gradually returned to her usual self, at least on the surface. Levin didn't notice that while he was taking care of Luna, Cyrilla, Zhangqiu, and Pinello all looked at him with meaningful eyes. Well, maybe we should call it a night, Levin announced, returning to the podium. This spell is still a bit too difficult. Even if I is here, I shouldn't let you face the Dementors directly now. Levin said with some self-blame, at least I should wait. You can successfully cast the complete patron saint and then start actual combat training. It's okay Levin, I was just shocked, don't worry about it. The Dementors won't give us time to prepare, will they? I still feel that actual practice can help me improve more. Levin clapped his hands and asked everyone to return to their seats. The little wizards have gained a lot, are in high spirits, and are full of expectations for the next training. The little wizards cheered and pounced on the sweets. Iwo monopolized a plate, and the fear he had felt was instantly forgotten. Levin actually provides late-night snacks. I will never miss this kind of study group. The little wizards all spoke to comfort Levin. In a blink of an eye, the course time is coming to an end. After having their fill of wine and food, the Ravenclaws lined up and happily returned to the lounge under the leadership of Pinello. But Levin insisted on closing the closet. All the desks rose into the air to form several rows of long tables in the classroom, and the little wizards were automatically pushed to the long tables by their chairs. A hearty late-night snack. To reward everyone for their efforts, I contacted the house elf door in the kitchen in advance and prepared some surprises for everyone. Tonight's training was very successful. I found that most of the people were able to summon the prototype of the patron saint. This is all the result of hard work, because the family has worked hard. Hopefully next weekend comes soon. The table was piled with mountains of cakes, puddings, chocolate frogs and other sweets, as well as bottles of iced juice and pumpkin juice. This group study was great. I feel like I've learned a lot. Am I the only one who thinks the female ghost named Sadeko is scarier than the Dementors? As he spoke, he held up his magic wand. Chapter 199. The news that Levin Green started a study group and taught the patroness charm within Ravenclaw quickly spread throughout the academy. Young wizards from other colleges expressed their envy, and many people specifically asked Ravenclaw's classmates whether this study group could still accept people. Harry Potter secretly stopped Levin in the library. Levin, you Ravenclaws are learning the patroness charm together, right? After a few hesitant greetings, Harry finally got to the point. Levin immediately understood what he meant. Harry also wants to learn the patroness charm, perhaps because of the publicity given by Malfoy's loudspeaker. He had always been quite concerned about being stunned by a Dementor on the train. Before Harry could say anything else, Levin stopped him in advance. Yes, but due to limited resources, we stipulated from the beginning that the study group is only open to Ravenclaw students for the time being. After all, the venue and the resources are all provided by the people in Ravenclaw, otherwise I would have invited you to participate. Worried that saying this was too 640 blunt, Levin added, but if Professor Flitwick's application to Principal Dumbledore is approved and we can get more help, we may recruit people from other colleges. I will remind you then. It would be a bit unkind if Harry refused again, so it would be better to explain it in advance. That would be great, if Gryffindors also had such a class. It's a pity that I have never heard of any Gryffindor seniors who can learn this spell. Harry said dryly, and then thought of another thing. By the way, about going to Hogsmeade next weekend. You know, it is impossible for my aunt and uncle to help me fill out the application form, and Professor McGonagall is not willing to help me fill it out. She thinks we shouldn't go to Hogsmeade. I originally wanted to use the invisibility cloak to go secretly, but there are too many Dementors outside the school. I wonder if you have any way for me to get around them. This kid, Levin always feels that he has a tendency to develop into a troll in the past few years at Hogwarts. When I encounter something I don't understand, my first reaction is to ask Hermione for help. If Hermione didn't understand it, or if it was clearly a problem that Hermione couldn't help him solve, he would come looking for him. He was really undecided and went to Ravenclaw Tower in the west to find Boot 11. But after all, they are friends who have known each other since elementary school, and Levin cannot ignore it completely. He thought for a while and said, "This is not difficult. On the opening day, you go directly to the Weasley twins and just say I asked you to go, and they will help you make arrangements." "Thank you, Cohen." Hearing this, the expression on Harry's face relaxed obviously, and he planned to say goodbye to Levin. "Wait." Levin stopped him. Harry turned back in confusion. "Actually, Harry, if you want to learn the Patronus charm, there is a better candidate." Levin reminded. "Who is that person?" Harry looked at him curiously. In addition to Levin's group, there are other minor wizards in Hogwarts. Patronus charm? It's Professor Remus John Lupin. Levin recommended the candidate in the original timeline. He was among the people who expelled the Dementors on the train. Harry nodded casually and left. He thought Levin's suggestion was a bit unrealistic. As a reckless Gryffindor, he had long developed the habit of never approaching the professor when encountering problems. Professors at Hogwarts have very heavy teaching tasks, so how can they have time to teach him? Levin also guessed his choice, shook his head indifferently, and continued to read his book. Even if he doesn't listen to his own advice, Old B will prompt him to find Professor Lupin sooner or later, so he doesn't want to worry about it. The day finally came to head to Hogsmeade. Levin found that everyone got up earlier than usual today. When he arrived at the auditorium for breakfast, he found that there were many more little wizards here than before. Everyone was wearing clothes that were convenient for traveling and discussing today's travel plans while eating. The upperclassmen continue to reveal their knowledge about Hogsmeade to the lowerclassmen, and they often win a lot of exclamations and envious looks. Levin sat down in his seat and soon heard Cyrilla's voice. "Levin, I'm sorry to keep you waiting. I just ate it not long ago." He turned around and involuntarily spanked the girl's body. The two have obviously been getting along day and night for several years, but when Levin looked at her like this, two red clouds appeared on Cyrilla's face today. The girl lowered her head and shyly tucked a strand of police hair behind her ear. A delicate silver earring appeared on her small and cute earlobe. At first glance, there was not much difference between Cyrilla today and usual, but Levin keenly discovered that she had many special details all over her body. For example, her eyebrows were specially drawn, eye makeup was applied, there were traces of rouge on her pink lips, her hair was braided carefully, and she had never seen her wearing earrings before. In terms of clothing, although Cyrilla is wearing the same clothes she has seen before, she has also undergone changes in details. For example, the shoulders are opened wider, slightly revealing her round and white shoulders, and the collar is also pulled down a few inches. Levin is particularly surprised that she, who is usually carefree, actually dresses up specially today. Even though she didn't dress up and put on heavy makeup like most people, she just modified the small details. But the changes in these details made her less sassy and cool than before, and more gentle and seductive. Levin already understood what the other party meant without using telepathy. It's hard to be so shy just by looking at him. So, Levin wisely leaned into Cyrilla's ear and whispered, "Today's light makeup suits you very well. It makes my eyes shine. This earring also matches you very well. I like it very much." After listening to Levin's praise, Cyrilla did not speak, and even the expression on her face did not change much. But Levin could feel the joy of being recognized and understood in the other person's heart, and he moved closer to Levin. At this moment, a disappointing voice suddenly sounded, interrupting the ambiguous atmosphere. Hey, what are you muttering about when you two meet? Put me aside." Levin turned around and saw that it was Pinello, this Cyrilla's best friend said to Levin as if she was taking credit. "Thank me, her dress today was all recommended by me. This slender head didn't even know how to put on makeup at the beginning, but I taught her step by step. It's been a long time since she even changed the clothes herself, the effect is pretty good, right?" Levin didn't answer, but secretly gave Pinello a thumbs up. Levin immediately looked at the little Iwo next to him. But Levin still gave a positive answer. "Don't worry, I will do it 1.1. "Shut up, Pinello." Naturally, she would not stay in Hogwarts in order to accompany Harry, who was unable to go to Hogsmeade. She thought so, as in the original book. "It'll be up to you then." Over at Gryffindor, Hermione happily ran to Levin after finishing her breakfast. Levin didn't even answer. Pinello was interrupted by the shy Siri again. "Okay, if you don't want to say it, don't say it." Pinello smiled and skipped the topic of makeup, and looked at Levin seriously. "Hey, Levin Green, I know that you have a good relationship with many girls, but for the sake of dressing up specially for Cyrilla, how about leaving her with a world of two at least today? Although her best friend was suspected of stealing his girlfriend from him before, this assist is really good now. Miss Know-It-all is dedicated to studying, but is a little slow in terms of emotions. On the long table in Ravenclaw, Zhang Chu winked at Levin, as if to say, we agreed at the beginning. But as Pinello said, the girl who wants to spend time with Levin in Germaud is not Ciri. Oh, you didn't tell me. But as a woman, her instinct still made her subconsciously exclude Levin from meeting more female friends, and also prompted her to want to stay with Levin for a while longer. Levin could only nod to her. When the efforts behind the scenes were exposed, Ciri immediately became angry and covered Pinello's mouth angrily. Levin realized that if he didn't make good arrangements today, he would definitely encounter an unprecedented Shura field. I woo. Chapter 200. After breakfast, several people walked to the foyer excitedly. Students who want to go to Hogsmeade Village, please gather here and take this road. Professor McGonagall's voice suddenly came from outside, and the originally chaotic crowd began to move under her command. Everyone slowly walked out of Hogwarts Castle and lined up in front of a huge cast iron gate. Before heading to Hogsmeade, each student's application form signed by their parents is checked to prevent anyone from sneaking out. Administrator Filch stood inside the gate, checking a long list. He stared at every face vigilantly, not letting anyone who shouldn't go out slip out of the gate of heaven. I saw him tyrannically snatching each student's application form, and with his vulture-like eyes, he kept looking back and forth between the application form and the students, racking his brains to make things difficult. This made many students in line feel a little uncomfortable. You have to stay here, don't you? Suddenly, Levin heard Draco Malfoy's sharp noise again. He lined up in the queue with his followers, Crabbe and Goyle, and sneered at Harry who was not far away. I don't dare to pass those dementors for fear of being stunned again, right? Malfoy said, and once again exaggeratedly performed the bridge section 05 where Harry fainted, causing a burst of ridicule from the little snakes. Pinello and Shirley glanced at Levin in surprise and found that he had not made any move and even held back Hermione who wanted to make a move. Malfoy also saw Levin in front of him, and immediately sneered subconsciously. But when he discovered that Levin had not made any move, he immediately became enlightened. Look, our savior has already broken up with Levin Green. It's so pitiful. He has no friends and can only stay alone in the castle. Harry ignored Malfoy and didn't go to find Levin. He just walked up the marble stairs alone and disappeared around the corner of the corridor. Hermione glanced at Levin in confusion, and Ronald continued to scold Malfoy angrily. But Malfoy had turned to Levin. You finally figured it out, Levin Green, you are not the same kind of person as them. You have to know that smart people like you can't get along with those stoneheads. You should have an identity like us, make friends with more people, so that you will have a bright future. Malfoy crossed his hands on his chest and began to preach to Levin a little proudly. The arrogance in his words was really annoying. After hearing his words, Zilly already touched the arcane sword in the bag. It seemed that as long as the other party said one more word, he would be ready to strike with a sword. It was Levin who seemed indifferent to his words. This made him even more proud. You have nothing to say, right? Is it because my words touched your heart? Levin shook his head, showing a helpless expression, and at the same time drew out his wand. You never seem to think before you speak. I am giving you a chance to make amends. His actions made Malfoy pale a little, but he still insisted, if I were you, I would be very careful. There is no benefit in being the savior's backer all day long. As soon as Levin thought about it, he understood that he was referring to Sirius. But he was still a little surprised. What he said at the beginning of contacting the other party, as well as his arrogant and awkward character, Levin could tell that this was actually Malfoy trying to show his kindness. Although Levin didn't pay any attention to this like overture, he had even decided to restart Malfoy's nightmare that had been interrupted for a month. But this still couldn't stop his curiosity. Why would Malfoy do this? He was severely punished by himself last time. Children of this age would not even think about pleasing their enemies, even in the most arrogant way. Could it be because of his father Lucius Malfoy's wishes? But with the relationship between Lucius and Levin, and Lucius's wisdom, if this is what he really means, then he really doesn't care about the fate of the Malfoy family. At this moment, Filch's surging voice sounded, You guys, do you still want to go to Hogsmeade? Malfoy glanced at Levin, gave up the fight with Ronald and the others, and walked out of the door surrounded by Crabbe and Goyle. The Malfoy family has been a family that is good at assessing situations since a long time ago. Luna came over at some point and revealed the secret in Japanese. Levin suddenly understood, then smiled bitterly. It can only be said that the Malfoy family tutors are really very pragmatic. In fact, what Urfa said is partly correct, because they went to the same elementary school. Levin and Harry's relationship was very good when they first went to school. But with the different courses after branching, his relationship with Harry actually became weaker and weaker. If it weren't for Hermione in the middle and their many adventures together, they might have become ordinary friends by now. At least this semester, he and Harry haven't had any special contact with each other for a long time. The last time they got together was when they went to comfort Hagrid in the first week of school. Especially this time, after Levin refused Harry to join the study group, the two seemed uncomfortable meeting again. Did you secretly help Harry go to Hogsmeade? Walking on the way to Hogsmeade, Hermione suddenly said, she finally figured out what was wrong with Levin and Harry in the previous confrontation. In fact, Levin admires this about Hermione. After treating him as the object of her adoration, Hermione always had unconditional trust in him. And this kind of trust comes with reason. Specifically, when faced with Levin's decision-making, he will always choose to obey it immediately, even if his choice seems unreasonable at the time, and then find out the reason afterwards. Just like just now, Hermione and Harry were obviously good friends, but when Levin grabbed her, she immediately gave up her quarrel with Malfoy. Even if Levin's choice at that time was to compromise with Malfoy and give up Harry's suspicion. This is what smart people do. Really smart people, when encountering a leader issuing an order that seems unreasonable, will usually choose to execute it with reservations and then evaluate the rationality of the order afterwards. If it is later proven that the leader is right, then it proves that the leader is a smarter person than him, and it is right to do as he says. If it turns out later that the leader was wrong, then just give up on the leader decisively. Levin continued, in addition, we have to consider the existence of Dementors. With Dementors around, the longer the prisoners stay in Azkaban, the weaker their bodies and minds will become, and the escape will be very difficult. Therefore, if a prisoner has the idea and ability to escape from prison, he will choose to escape as early as possible instead of procrastinating until he loses his escape. 5. Update 5/4. Additional update 3976. Hermione was instantly happy, but she still had questions to answer. After hearing Levin's analysis, the two women nodded in agreement. The new month has arrived, and I would like to ask for a wave of custom orders, flowers, monthly votes, comments, and rewards. If you have votes, please give them to me as the author. This is really important to me. But no matter how much you apologize afterwards, it won't be as heartwarming as Hermione's all-round trust beforehand. Everyone said that Sirius's target is Harry. Even Professor McGonagall disapproved of him going to Hogsmeade. It would be very dangerous for you to let Harry out. 880. Hermione was very confident. On the other hand, Ronald, when he saw that Levin did not stand with him immediately, he immediately showed his face to Levin. Hermione nodded. Pinello's statement was also possible. If you say that, you don't understand the media very well. The boy who lived in Rolls in Hogwarts is reported once and is news, but the boy who lived in Rolls in Hogwarts story has been reported for 3 consecutive years and no one has reported it at all. I will read it. In fact, the news about Harry's enrollment 3 years ago did appear in the Daily Prophet and Wizarding Weekly. Of course, Levin also believes that Ronald will definitely apologize to him after figuring everything out. But what Black got was not news about Harry, but news about the traitor Peter Pettigrew. At this time, Pinello on the side analyzed, maybe it took him a few years to think of a way to escape from prison, or in other words, he only learned about Harry this year. For such Hermione, Levin naturally did not hide her intentions and nodded naturally, yet, you are not the weird uncle and aunt who don't understand him. With them here, it is impossible for Harry to get an autograph, so I just let him find help from them. Levin somewhat admired the wisdom of the female student council president. She almost guessed half of the truth. Sure enough, the Levin she admired was not such a heartless person. Levin's question left her speechless. Everyone says, is that right? Levin shook his head and commented, sometimes you can't just look at things at face value. If Black's target is Harry, then why didn't he do it the year before last, when we entered school? Prison Break. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel so you are notified of future uploads. You can find the next parts in the playlist visible on the screen or on my channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.